Good evening. I'd like to call to order the Tuesday, December 10th, 2013 meeting of the Township of South Orange Village Board of Adjustment. May we have a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Don.
Here.
Mr. DeScalo.
Here.
Mr. Parlapiano.
Here.
Mr. Reeves.
Here.
Mr. Semper. Mr. Adler.
Here.
Mr. Shapiro. And Ms. Werwin. Here.
Okay, we're expecting Mr. Semper presently. Pursuant to Section 5, Chapter 231, PL 1975, this is to state for the record that adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public by posting and maintaining the annual notice of regular meetings on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by publishing the annual notice of regular meetings for 2013 in the December 2012 edition of the South Orange Maplewood News Record, and by filing said notice in the office of the village clerk. So the first order of business tonight is the approval of minutes from our meeting on Thursday, November 7th, 2013. So we can take a look at those minutes. I took a look at them. I thought that they adequately described, summarized what went on in the meeting.
I do too, Rusty. I move that we accept them as they are.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. DeScalo.
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano.
Yes.
Mr. Adler.
Yes.
Ms. Werwin.
Yes.
And what about me?
I'm sorry, Mr. Reeves.
Well, I don't know what I want to be, Mr. Yes. Okay, the next is approval of resolution, case 1006, Rucci Realty with Dr. Singla. So we have the resolution.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I received comments from the board, which I think ought to be made to the resolution. On the first page in the whereas clause, it correctly identifies both Mr. DeSessa as the engineer and Mr. Salamone as the architect, as well as the fact that the doctor himself testified.
That's correct.
On the second page, in the second part of paragraph 3, changing the wording there to show that instead the plan was to limit the hours, to change it to the hours would be limited. And paragraph 6 requested to clarify the second sentence to change it to, and this is the proposal, to change it to this. Asked about the parking, he noted that his calculations were based on reducing the gross square footage, paren 3,200, close paren, by only 10%.
Okay.
Which is a conservative approach because there's often more floor space which is not usable. Just trying to clarify the fact that that was his testimony. Does that make any sense?
Can I see that? Could you read that again, Pat, please?
Asked about the parking, he noted that his calculations were based on reducing the gross square footage, paren 3,200, close paren, by only 10%, which is a conservative approach because there's often more floor space which is not usable.
Okay, I guess that does.
I understand that.
Good.
Is there any, I think that was it. No, there was a couple more spelling and grammatical.
There were in 17, insert the word use after inherently beneficial. And there's a question in condition number 2, which was because the applicant requested that or stated that his hours of operation were going to be limited to certain days, whether or not those days should become a condition, and those hours that he stated should become a condition to the use.
We did not establish that and require that as conditions of this application.
wasn't
So
part of the
by
vote.
that fact alone, we wouldn't be able to, aside from, I don't think it would be a good idea. We just didn't establish it. So that's kind of water under the bridge. It's a good question, but just wasn't made a condition.
And finally, the last sentence in condition 3 is a throwaway, which should not be there. It was left over from the prior resolution.
Okay.
That'll be out.
Now, this was Mr. Adler did most of this work, I think. I appreciate your doing this. And when we make suggestions, this is how you do it. You track the changes so Mr. Dwyer can see which ones will remain. So that was well done. Okay, so then we have to We okay with those changes?
I'm okay with it.
Well, they seem reasonable to me.
Okay. All right. So then we move on to, I'm sorry.
I move that we accept the resolution, pass the resolution
Thank
as
you.
amended.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. DeScala,
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
Mr. Aller,
Yes.
and Ms. Warren.
Yes.
Okay, that was Mr. Semper who just called. I suppose he'll be here. Okay, so then the next one is the resolution for case 1007, William and Janet Perlman on Richmond Avenue for the one-story addition. I looked at this, I really didn't, it was a relatively straightforward application.
I think it represented, our discussion and the results of our meeting.
I think it was short and sweet and to the point, was accurate, so I didn't have any suggestions for amendments. Did anybody have any? Okay, so we have a motion.
I'll move to accept the resolution as prepared.
I'll second that.
Okay, Mr. DeScala,
Yes.
Mr. Parlapiano,
Yes.
Mr. Reeves,
Yes.
and Ms. Warren.
Yes.
Excuse me for just a moment, I see what. Okay. All right, so we move on now to the resolution for the meeting dates for the 2014. So that was sent to us also. And as usual, most of the dates are the first Tuesday of the month is proposed. There is a Thursday, November 6th meeting proposed, which historically has been done for Election Day, but now village employees must work on Election Day. Is that the case? So otherwise, I don't see a reason to change that from I think it should just be Tuesday the 4th, unless other people need all day to decide how to vote.
Mr. Chairman, that would have to be squared with the SOPAC board and their schedule to see
Oh, this is already in the SOPAC?
how,
I don't believe the second half, SOPAC's year's calendar starts July, and they really haven't nailed down. These dates are actually maybe subject to change. The second half of the year may be subject to SOPAC. We chose our dates because those are our dates.
Okay, so that being said, so it may be moot, but nonetheless, we should pick our dates that we want. Do we want to leave it the 6th? I don't particularly care. I like consistency. I like seeing 12 Tuesdays. It looks nice. But if you want, varieties, the spice of life, if you want to do a Thursday, I suppose we could do that also.
What was the, is there any other reason that we don't traditionally meet on Election Day? It was that the village employees don't work that day? That was the reason?
I think that was the main reason.
Well, what about that members of the public might be busy
Voting.
voting?
Does it kind of...
It
does take 5 minutes.
The shops don't shut down. Of course, it's only the government that shuts down. Look, I don't think we need to, if there's an application pending before us in the evening, I'll go vote in the morning. But, I will defer to the board.
If consistency makes you smile, I have no problem making it Tuesday.
I like 12 Tuesdays, too.
I have a better chance of there being a conflict if it's on Thursday.
Well, okay, so good. It's all about you, Mr.
There we
Don.
go.
So, Jetta, let's change that Thursday the 6th to a proposed Tuesday the 4th. Acknowledging that all of this is subject to change. Okay. So with that change, may we have a motion?
Mr. Semper's here if you want to wait for him.
Yeah.
I believe, Mr. Chairman, that Labor Day is the 1st, if that makes any difference.
Labor Day is the 1st,
Of September.
and we're doing it on Tuesday.
Right.
Does anybody have problems with the Tuesday after Labor Day? No? No? Okay, so we're going to keep it the 2nd. Let the record reflect that Mr. Semper has arrived. Okay, so may we have a motion?
So I'll move that we accept the resolution for dates for next year as amended.
A second.
Okay, Mr. Don?
Yes.
Mr. DeScalo?
Yes.
Mr. Qualipiano?
Yes.
Mr. Reeves?
Yes.
Mr. Semper?
Yes.
Mr. Adler?
Yes.
And Ms. Waring?
Yes.
Okay, and in just a moment, we'll take the case at hand. I wanted to alert everybody that January, as it stands now, is going to be a busy meeting. We're going to have the Richmond Avenue case, which has been carried, the Fairview Avenue case, which has been carried, as well as then Seton Hall, which has been carried. Did we need to discuss a special meeting for Seton Hall? They're not here.
I think she's here. Jetta, were we able to get any confirmation from SOPAC about their availability?
No, not yet. He was
Hi,
working on it.
I didn't see you. You're down there.
Hello, Nicole Dory, on behalf of Seton Hall. Is this working?
No.
Try the other one.
Excuse me?
Try the
There.
other.
Okay.
It's okay.
Nicole Dory on behalf of Seton Hall University.
Okay, you all wanted to request a special meeting?
Yes, we were unable to get everything together that the board had requested at the completeness hearing within 10 days before tonight's hearing. So we had requested a special meeting date in January. I understand from Jetta that it's been difficult to get some dates from SOPAC. I had provided dates that my professionals were not available, but I didn't have a confirmed date in advance of tonight's hearing. So I don't know if you have dates at this point.
I do not.
No, okay. And unfortunately, the university is not available for the January hearing. So at this point, I guess I just propose to carry it to the February meeting, if that's okay with the board. And if we are able to get a special hearing date, we'll renotice.
Do we know anything about dates available in January from SOPAC? Are there no dates?
We just don't know. Adam Lerner, he reached out to them, but I don't think they got back to him yet.
Okay, are you still interested in a January if one could come up?
Yes, we are very interested in a special meeting in January, and I had provided, certain weeks and days that we were available to Jetta. So, at this point, I haven't been able to confirm anything with SOPAC or with our professionals. So, I just propose to carry it to February, and if there is a special meeting date, we'll be glad to renotice.
All right, so let's do it this way. We got you on for February, which is fine. And then if we get any, Jetta, if you find if any dates are available for SOPAC, and I know things, from what I know, which is not much, is that things are pretty limited here. Things are pretty
Okay.
jammed up. But if something becomes available and the board is available, it's a reasonable request, and we will try to make that available.
Okay, thank you very much. I understand that the next hearing date in February is February 4th. Is that correct?
Yes, we have February 4th.
Okay, so if we could carry it to that date, and like I said, if a meeting date comes up before then, we will renotice.
Very good.
Is the applicant in receipt of the recommendation letters from Higher Gruel and Omlin Engineering? Do you know?
We were making a submission in response to the completeness reports, so I didn't know if the board's professionals were going to be submitting their review reports after that or before.
We just submitted a preliminary memo that I thought had gone to you, but
Okay, I haven't
if you
received
did not
that.
receive it, then I certainly will check in my office and get that to you first
Okay.
thing tomorrow.
Would there be one from Omland as well?
There is one
There
from
is.
Omland, yes.
They didn't send that to you. Okay, so they need
We'll
to...
make sure that
That's
both
dated December
are
3rd.
sent.
Okay, I'll check with Kevin.
Right. Oh, exactly, because both of those reports were thoughtful and hopefully constructive.
Right.
And I think they will address some of the things that reasonably our board would consider, such as parking, the night school, things like this, that I really want Seton Hall to pay attention to, if for nothing else, to move things along faster.
Yes.
And to get to the heart of the matter, rather than kind of dragging it out.
Certainly,
Okay.
we hope to address, all of the professionals' items in advance of the hearing to be,
Okay.
as expeditious as possible.
Okay, so, Ms. Gruhl, you're going to get that to Seton Hall?
I'm actually emailing
Sending
my
it right now?
office right now so that we make sure that
Okay.
you get both.
Okay, it might have gone to Kevin, so I can certainly work with him to get it.
Okay, anything else?
That's all for me.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. So then we will have two cases, which I think we can manage pretty easily in January. Okay, so this evening, we're going to hear case 1008, Ian Betts, 72 3rd Street, D variance. Applicant is seeking a variance to permit a fifth unit within the existing third floor space.
Good evening. It's a little funny
Yeah, this,
being on a stage. I guess I have...
I have a talking
right.
architect's plans, is what I'm looking at. Ms. Birkenwald, maybe you could come around to the side a little bit, or maybe move the plans back, one way or the other, so we can see your faces.
It's a pleasure to be before you and to see you in this capacity again.
Okay, hang on a second, I'm getting up the high sign. Closer to,
Am I talking now?
There you
now
go.
the mic works. Okay. Get used to this and not step backwards. I am here for Ian Betts, who is the owner and resident of 72 3rd Street in South Orange. And I know most board members drive by the property, take a look around. 72 3rd Street is what I think of a lovely old South Orange house. It hasn't got aluminum siding. Ian Betts has had it painted. It's an attractive house that must be 100 to 120 years old. As the evidence I submitted to you before shows, and I have a few other things, a few other documents that I wanted to pass out to the board. 72 3rd Street, as the documents show, had 4 residents in 1918, and then for a number of years in 1930, 32, 34.
Ms. Birkenwald.
May I interrupt you just for a minute here?
Sure.
First of all, I'd like to just try to help the board understand what it is you're looking for, and why is it right now that you're seeming to be testifying, but you're actually trying to explain something to the board? Is that what we're doing?
All right. No, I submitted some papers, and I'm trying to explain what I submitted. What we're looking for is to ask the board to grant the use of a 5th dwelling unit. Currently, the building has 4 dwelling units. The planner had raised an issue that the 4 dwelling units may or may not be a prior non-conforming use. I have, and I just like to pass it around, maybe I'm a little short in copies, maybe 2, you could read them. I have the tax assessor's Most of these documents were gotten by open public record requests. I have the tax assessor's statement on this building, which just gives you some information, particularly the apartments, the 4 existing apartments, 2 are on the first floor, 2 are on the second. And there already are rooms on the 3rd floor that have been used since before my client purchased the property. He purchased it with his father in 1988 or 86? 88. And lived in one of the 2nd floor units as well as occupying the 3rd floor, which has, according to the tax assessor, and I'll pass this out, 942 plus square feet. So I'd like to pass that out. I also have the rental property license that my client has obtained. This one is for 2012, for the
Let's
3
just stop.
rental
Hold on.
units that exist now.
You
I'd
just
like
passed
to
something
pass
around
these
which
out.
has not previously been.
Excuse me?
The thing that you're passing around is the first time the board's seeing that?
That wasn't submitted with the application. I
so
made a
why don't we
number
mark
of
this
open
as-
public records
Why don't we mark this as
requests.
Exhibit A1, okay? And could you tell us what Exhibit A1 is?
That's the tax assessor's document that they have for every property in town, including your own properties. And it tells you some information about the property. What I find interesting is it shows you the square footage of the property. And the 1st and 2nd floors are about 2,300 plus square feet. The 3rd floor is over 930 square feet. So we're not asking for you to make an apartment into 2 studios or tiny little apartments.
Can I interrupt you again, please? Because before we get to the application, I think we need to address, you started to address the issue about the pre-existing non-conforming. So let's focus on that because that seems to be a threshold issue.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Mr. Dwyer. You sent us several documents, and so we have some listings back to 1918, I believe. And so I'd like you to focus on that because that would stop us in our tracks if that isn't established.
Let me get my copy of that out just so I'm with you on it. Unless somebody has it handy to look through.
Which one?
My file. I think I have it.
So I have something here dated November 26th, and it has the Oranges directories. This is something that the board received. So we should all have this at this point. And this is something that we'd like you to introduce and clarify. Give her my copy.
You can have one of our
I just am
copies.
looking for my copy of it, which is not popping out. I have some of
Would it be okay with you if we mark that A2?
it. Sure.
Okay.
All right, what I did to look to see how long this property has been a 4-family is I went to the South Orange Library, and they have a series of books. It's called the Oranges Directory. And they're basically predecessors to telephone books. Before there were telephone books, there were directories of residents of towns. And if you go to the South Orange Library, you could see these books and confirm it. And if you're curious, you could look up your own house and see who lived there, if it's an older house, from the time it was built. They don't have them for every year. I believe they're every other year, but they don't have every single alternate year. So the first and earliest mention I found, or the earliest the Oranges directory I found, was 1918. And I photocopied the page that had the address 72 3rd Street. And on that page, it showed, and my summary is just to make it a little easier for you of what's there. I photocopied the 1980 page, and that was the only directory that didn't say 1918 on the top of every single page. The other directories that I photocopied actually have the year on the top. So I photocopied it with another page that had the year. And on the bottom, on the left side of that document, it has 3rd Street, it says SO for South Orange, and then under the number 72, it has 4 residents. And I summarized it for you, but you could actually see in the 1918 Oranges directory, there was a John McGee, a Christian Munther, a Norman Rutherford, and a Gustav A. Schultz that lived in 72 3rd Street, sorry. In 1930. Then there were a few years that were missing. I'll tell you, these directories are kind of incredible and give you a lot of information. And I was very careful with them, but when I was done doing my research, my suit was covered with little yellow flakes because the books are that old and they're starting to decompose. In 1930, I looked up 72 3rd Street, and that's the second page you have in this exhibit.
What are the asterisks for? Did you happen to read what the asterisks are all about? The 1918?
It says on there, those people have a telephone.
Is that what it is? Thank you.
I remember that was for some of them, but I'm not sure if it was in 1930. I guess there were some telephones there then.
It's not.
I made the mark on my photocopy where 72 is, and that's in the 1930 directory. Other than that line I made that could point you to it on the page that on top says Oranges Directory 1930, I made a line where 72 is, and you see there's a Nelson Fleming, a George Foster, an Isaac Smith, and a Zach Wilson. There are 4 residents in 1918 and then in 1930. And then I found similarly 4 residents in 1932. And there were some similar names, George Foster, Isaac Smith, Wilson Zach, and then it said vacant. I suppose that was around the time after the Depression, and maybe there were more likely to be people who were evicted or something. In 1934, the next page shows you also 72 3rd Street, and there are 4 residents. I think Isaac Smith and Zach Wilson sound like the same residents that were there 2 years earlier. So we don't have every year, we don't have every book there, but I found from 1918, 1930, 1934, 1936, there were 4 residents. Similar names, I think. Isaac Smith lived there a long time. I see his name came up a few times. In 1938, it seemed like after the 1918 version, every one I photocopied had the year on top. The 1918 one I just, it didn't have it right on top. And then 1940, there were 4 residents. 1963, you had 4 residents and you had telephone numbers. I think the asterisks, or then later they have some little bell signal show that the residents had telephone numbers. But I thought this was quite interesting, really. You could kind of look up any address in town and find out who lived there for the years that they have the books. So I think you see from this exhibit uncontroverted proof that at least since 1918, this building had 4 dwelling units. Did I explain it? Does anyone have any
You've done a
questions?
very good job, yeah.
A few other things, the town has always acknowledged this.
Ms. Birkenwald, I don't know, maybe I'm missing the point here. It indicated that 4 people were living there. Does that mean 4 dwelling units? As of 1963, I think, there's 4 different telephones that people have, which suggests, maybe dwelling units. But hasn't it always been the case that in the R100, the residential zone, you could have roomers, dormers, staying in a house?
It's a good point. I would think that, given that they're all different names, and that there aren't any situations where you see a bunch of the same names at any given dwelling, that it might be fair to assume that they're dwelling units.
Okay.
And also the fact that in 1 year, one of them says vacant.
Right.
Oh, did I miss that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I believe the listings also referred to head of household, which generally at that time was a male unless there was no male in the house. But going back in history.
When was the ordinances were established?
22 was the
Yeah.
first year.
So we did this.
I have a copy of it.
Well, we were given it as a board a copy,
Yeah.
if you recall.
Do we have questions about this threshold issue? Because then that would take us on to the next. Do we accept that this is a pre-existing non-conforming condition of the 4 dwelling units?
I do.
Yeah, I think the work that council did persuades me.
Yeah.
Okay, very good, thank you.
I would ask that whatever the board decides, that there, again, I pointed out that I had provided a prior resolution to the board in the 60s that mentioned at that time that there were 4 dwelling units. And I think the word used, and this is in the 1962 resolution that was submitted, the planner didn't quite agree that this was a finding of fact of the board. I think that resolutions in the 60s were not written like your attorney writes resolutions today. They're far more detailed. He's very, I read his resolutions.
You've established with this new evidence what you need to do. I don't think that resolution established it, and you think you've done a fine job of establishing it now.
Well, I wouldn't mind talking about it just a little more. As I read through the rest of these in 1918, I see that almost every address has multiple names that aren't related to each other. And I don't know if that means that it could open us up to one heck of a precedent with regard to using this book, that people can start coming in with their...
Well, I'm just looking at the 1936 one on Toulouse Road, and there all the addresses, and I know that street is all one families, and there seemed to be only one resident.
Maybe it's just, it's because it's in the area of 3rd Street, but there's Taylor. Yeah, I think that we might want to do some more research on this, just to make sure that we're not opening ourselves up to a situation where we're going to have a bunch of people coming in looking to to prove that they have pre-existing nonconformity.
Well, to confirm this, I have a few other items. None of them, I think, are quite as persuasive as the Book of Residences, which really are, and again, anyone here could go to the library and check it, although I'd ask you to take one person to do it, because I'm afraid those books may fall apart, and if they're not digitalized in 10 years, I don't know if they'll still be here. But I do have, and again, I made Oprah requests for town records, I made requests at DCA, and they are not required to keep records that long. And people think that, oh, I'll go to town hall and I'll get plans for my house and building permits from 50 years ago, and guess what? They don't have them. But I got DCA inspection notices here, and inspection notice and certificate of registrations, and I perhaps would just ask that these be passed
Are you
out.
how would you like to mark each one and give them to us singly so we know what we're looking at?
Are there two different things, Eli?
I actually have two different items. I have documents from DCA. They don't go back, nothing goes back before 1995 in DCA. But it's a statement from DCA showing it was registered as 4 dwelling units since they keep records, which
All right, well, should we mark that then
isn't
as
even as
A3?
long as my client. So I passed those. And the other thing that
Yes.
I have is current, but it's the rental license. Mr. Betts occupies.
Hold on. What do we describe A3 as? What is it? Multiple registration
DCA
certificate?
records, Department of Community Affairs.
Is it the green card? Is there anything else?
They're actually the registration statements, and attached to them are some kind of inspection notice.
From 1995?
Nothing goes back before 1995. There are a few years there, I
Oh,
think,
okay.
2011, 2006. And then I just have the rental property license. Mr. Betts occupies 1 unit and he rents 3, and this is
Same one.
a license to rent 3 units.
Is that issued by South Orange?
That's issued by the village.
Is there a date?
Yeah, that one is last year's, September 1st, 2012.
Okay, so this gets sort of to your concern, Mr. Descala, that it's not merely pre-existing, but this is some evidence that it's been
Right.
continuous.
Yeah.
Right? That's what you wanted to see.
That's exactly right.
So I think what the Orange's directory shows you, combined with some more recent documents starting in 95 from DCA, is that since 1918, this had 4 dwelling units, and it was registered with DCA.
Okay, I'm looking here at something you passed us. The Township of South Orange Village rental property lease from September 1st, 2012 to August 31st, 2013, which is coming around right now. And it's a license to Mr. Betts. And it says maximum number of occupants, and it says 3 units.
Well, he occupies 1 unit. He doesn't need a rental license since he's the owner occupying 1 unit.
Okay. Pass that.
Good work, by the way. In my term here, I haven't seen this document before, and there have been many cases before us where people have flung their arms up saying they have no way of proving that.
It's right in the South Orange Public Library, right?
We can recommend it to other applicants, I
You
guess.
have to know where to look. Because DCA, Town Hall, doesn't really keep records that long. I mean, I think they kept all those records in that small Town Hall building.
Okay, is there other argument you wanted to make about this matter?
Well, also the resolution from the 60s seemed to indicate in 1962 that it was also a four-family. So I really think that we show continuous occupancy as a four-family without any doubt. And I think the board should definitely accept the proofs offered.
Okay, again, I guess I'll ask again. Are we willing to state this for the record, that it's a pre-existing, non-conforming four-unit residence?
Yes, I am.
Yes, I am. I would agree.
Mr. Scala, Ms.
Yes,
Lauren?
yeah, I agree.
Yes, okay, good. All right, so we'll state that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, I have three witnesses. Mr. Betts is here. I'm not sure we will call him as a witness, but he's here in case the board would like to ask him any questions or if any issues come up. I have an architect here who drew the floor plans that were submitted, and will just describe the property to you and the floor plans. And then I have a planner here who will discuss our request that you approve a fifth unit on the third floor. So perhaps I should have the architect start now. Let's see.
But do you want, before we get the architect started, did you want to move through A1, or is that going to come? A1 is your, I don't know what it's called,
That's
Mr.
the
Don.
tax assessor
The
sheet.
tax assessor sheet.
Yes, I would like to move all these documents into evidence.
Okay, are you going to bring this up at some point during anybody's testimony?
Yes.
Okay, I just, because it's been put out here, but we really haven't discussed it yet. Okay, I just wanted to remind you. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just think the board, this is, a tax assessor sheet really gives you a lot of information. Particularly, I am submitting it because it shows you the square footage of the property and a little bit more about it, and I think it's a nice thing.
But I guess what I'm getting at, I'm trying to look at it quickly here. I don't see where the square footage of the third floor is. I'm missing it here. Somebody needs to point it out.
Right side in the corner.
Finished attic, under attic, finished attic.
Finished attic is basically the third floor, and that's, I think, 940, something, 940 square feet.
942.
Is that what it means, Mr. Don? Okay, so we're all looking at that, the attic, finished attic, 942 square feet.
And that's the space we would like to be a fifth unit. On the second floor, if you look, there's something like 2,300 square feet.
2270 on the upper story and 2304 on the first story.
So there are 2 units on the first floor and 2 on the second, and they're not small units. The second floor, which now the second floor and the third floor are occupied by Mr. Betts, and together we're talking about over 2,000 square feet. I really just thought that that was an informative document that the board should have to know what this property is, the size of it, the size of the units. All right, Mr. Our architect is William Dobson.
Hello. Yes,
Please
hello.
raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give to this board this evening is the whole truth?
Yes, I do.
Please state your name and address for the record.
William T. Dobson, 515 Hort Street, Westfield, New Jersey. Thank you.
Mr. Dobson, are you a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
Would you just tell the board where you went to school?
I went to school in Pratt Institute in Brooklyn. I've been a practicing architect in New Jersey for approximately 30 years, and I'm licensed in 5 other states.
I would ask that the board accept Mr. Dobson as a licensed professional architect.
Mr. Dobson, have you testified before zoning boards of adjustment before?
Yes, I have. Berkeley Heights, Hoboken, and I've done other states. That's basically, I've done a handful of states, those 2 municipalities in New Jersey.
Do we have any questions? Okay, we recognize you as an expert in architecture.
Thank you. Just maybe you should go forward. I have a little stage fright of falling off the stage. I'll have to get used to this. I guess in some ways you have good acoustics here, so and you don't have that noisy old air conditioner in Town Hall that made it difficult to listen to the testimony. But, all right, Mr. Dobson, are you familiar with 72 3rd Street?
Yes, I am.
And did you draw the architectural floor plans?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Would you perhaps first describe the property and the house and then go over the plans?
Okay, well, this property exists on a lot that's approximately 100 feet. It's 99 feet by 178 feet. And it's to my knowledge that this home was built around 1894. And the architectural style on this home is very unique. It's what I would call a romantic Victorian. And I have drawings further in that I'll show you. And what's nice about this house is what I've noticed is that the present owner, who's lived here since 1988, has done quite a good job of restoring the architectural features of this house here. If you look at this, you'll see, whoops, that's okay, yeah. If you look at this, you'll see that this is a gable roof.
Mr. Dobson, may I ask, are these plans that you're referring to the same as the plans submitted to the board?
Yes, they are.
And how many sheets in your set?
There's 4 sheets, and this would be sheet A-3.
Okay. Is it all right, Elaine, if we mark that as A5? Do you mind? Ms. Birkenwald, may we mark these as A5?
Yes, sir.
Could you just tell us the revision date that's in the title block so we all make sure we're looking at the right one?
There's a date, 8/23/2013, and there's a revision date that's, the revision number 1 was August 8th, 2013, and the second revision date is 8/23/2013.
The second revision is just of 1 sheet.
That's correct. That was a sheet A2 where I had to revise the egress in response to the
Prior sheet.
But as I was mentioning before, if you take a look at sheet A3, you will see that there's a very nice gingerbread molding that's at the top of the gable, and the present owner has put a lot of effort into restoring this trim work at various locations on the building. The other thing that Mr. Betts has done is that he's restored and painted the existing clapboard. I'm pretty sure the planner will show you later the color scheme, and it's very contextual, and it works very well with the neighborhood. And I think in terms of being a nice landmark for the neighborhood of South Orange, I think this is very beneficial, because what happened from what I can see here and what I saw is that the first part of the house, the front here, was built originally, like I mentioned to you before, in 1894, and then around in the 40s, there was an addition that was put on in the back. And if you walk up Third Street and you look, and you go around, as you know, it's all hilly here, coming up the valley, you'll see that this stands out, and it reads very well from the street. Okay, the other thing is that the windows, the trim around the windows are very unique. And it's something that you really don't see anymore, and it's very difficult to duplicate. And what Mr. Betts has done is he's preserved a lot of this, as well as the entry doors. He's painted a very nice red, and it's a pretty good structure, and it's well maintained. And he's told me, and I'm just looking at it, that he paints this every 4 years, and so he's put a lot of time and effort and money into keeping this structure and house in pretty good condition.
But we're not really addressing the building because there's no changes to the exterior, correct?
No, what's on the
So can we
original
focus
site
on
plan,
what we're here for, which is the fifth unit?
The fifth unit, we need to look at the sheet with the third floor.
Right.
I think A2.
Yes.
This doesn't seem to hold.
Sheet A2 shows that the fifth unit that we're looking at, what is going to occur, there will be no increase in the lot coverage. This is an existing structure, and what you have up here is the stair. You come up, and this is all on the same level as been, and it's approximately 943, 950 square feet. You come up here, and off to the left as you come up here is a proposed dining room with a proposed kitchen. And then you come around the corridor here, and there's a proposed bedroom with a proposed living room. And what I have shown here with relative detail is two means of egress that the fire marshal had requested that I elaborate. If you look at revision 2 on the set. And one means of egress is through, there's an existing ladder that you climb up, and the code requires a minimum egress opening of 5.7 square feet. And if you look at the drawing, I'm proposing a window that will be 6.3 square feet as one means of egress. And then in the proposed dining room, I'm showing a platform where you walk up 2 steps, which would give a person that would have to get out of here, an occupant that would have to get out of here would have to walk up 2 steps to come to a sill, because by code, the sill has to be less than 44 inches or less above the floor. So that would be yeah.
The fire chief had raised the issue of a second means of egress, and the amended plans just show that there are 2 other possible means of egress, correct?
Correct.
And the applicant agrees that he will provide a 2-code second means of egress, correct?
And what would
Can I
happen
just
is-
clarify the date of the
Right.
A2? I think we've received a revised plan dated, most recent revision, 11/26/13.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
But your
that.
sheet looks different than the one that we have. I don't know why, so I don't have this.
I don't have one dated 11/26.
Well, that's why I wanted to clarify it.
I had left it, I had left 20 sets of them right before Thanksgiving. I think the Wednesday before. It's a single sheet that was supplemented. And
Came
the,
separately, right?
excuse me?
It came separately.
Yes, it came separately. It wasn't stapled with the original said. And it just, the reason for the revision is just to show two possible additional second means of egress. If this board would grant the application, the applicant agrees that in conjunction with the town building department, he will provide a second appropriate means of egress. Just as a point, the existing fire escape goes to the third floor right now.
Yes, it does. If you look here, there's like a walkway that is required by code, and there's an offset because there's a dormer out here, and the person like in an emergency going through this window would have to go around and down like this to the fire escape. The top of this existing roof is approximately 4 feet above the floor of the attic. So that's, if you were to cut a section through here, that's why there's the ladder here, and then this is an existing ladder, by the way, and I have to, go in front of the construction official to get his read on it. But on the second window here, that's why I provided the steps. So, people have got to walk up and out, and then they go to the fire escape, which I've observed is in pretty good shape. It's well maintained by the owner.
Now, the existing third floor apartment, in order to go from the third floor to the second floor unit that the owner has, he has to walk into a common hallway. Is that correct?
Yes.
So that's not a really desirable situation, is it?
No, it isn't.
And the third floor could be a completely nice 900-plus square foot apartment on its own.
Yes.
Could we just go over...
Ms. Berkerwall, can I ask a question? Because I'm confused about this new folding glass window and where that ladder that's attached, where does that go? Just help me understand.
Okay, this ladder here is an existing ladder that's attached, and this ladder goes up approximately 4 feet, and there's a window, a folding window made by Nano Wall Windows,
Right?
and it would fold open in an emergency.
Right?
I've also proposed to the,
If I get on that ladder, I go out the window and on the ladder?
you go up the
onto that
ladder,
flat
out the
roof at the
window,
back.
and along this walkway towards
down
the
to the
fire
flat
escape.
roof.
But the back part of the building is a flat or a very shallow sloping roof. So if you're in that existing stair, you go up the ladder, out the window, onto the roof, walk over to the right, and get on the
Get on the fire escape.
fire escape and down.
Okay.
That's
I think we
correct.
have an architect on the board, is it, or? Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's exactly the possible means of egress. And we're showing 2 additional means of egress. We only need to add 1. We show 2 because when you get into building code issues with old buildings, sometimes something either doesn't work or would cost a fortune, so maybe we would do it the other way. But there's either, he could go out,
That's correct,
he
yes.
could go out one of 2 ways, and ultimately, if the board
One of
should
your means
choose
of
to
egress
approve
is
this
the stair.
application.
That's correct.
Plus the stairs. That's
Plus the stair.
second. That's why we only need 1 of these 2
And
changes.
I've also proposed to my client 2 other window types, depending on how the review goes. So I'm trying to work with the existing rough opening that's in this home. So.
It seems that having a platform in the middle of the dining room is probably the least desirable.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's true.
But I don't know that we have to get into the minutia of the second means of egress.
Thank you. I think this is really, we needed to show it because the fire chief raised the issue. But this really, if the board should choose to approve a 5th unit, then the applicant agrees he will go according to code and go along with what the building department requires, whether it be changing one window or
Well, not
another.
to micromanage, but if the fire escape comes up to the roof, why not just modify the fire escape to have a direct access out of the dining room?
Well, that's an excellent point you're raising. The reason that I wouldn't do that is that, and I obviously didn't bring the photographs, but you have a gable here, an 8-on-12 gable, and this would have to go around, and you could use this kitchen window, be modified, and it really wouldn't look that good. The most inconspicuous way to do it would be to come, what I'm proposing here is, or if I can get approval on the egress window on the landing.
Okay.
It's,
Well, there's already a fire escape.
It's the architecture
There's already
of
a
the
fire
house.
escape there, so you really just have to figure out a way to get to it.
Yeah, and I think what happened originally when they put in this fire escape is that that's the reason why it came up here, because they couldn't, if there's an overhang here that isn't shown on this plan that goes out approximately 30 inches. So the easiest thing for whoever built this way back when is to put the fire escape right at the edge here, at the edge of this roof.
All right, I just maybe briefly showed the second floor. Is that this one?
Well, before we go to before we leave this attic space, can you just tell me, is there full ceiling height in all of this space?
I was going to add, what is the ceiling height on the attic floor?
The ceiling height on the attic floor, it's going, and this isn't shown on this plan because for obvious reasons. You have a gable that comes across here and it slopes down.
Yep.
The slope is 8 on 12. It's a high ceiling at the crown, and then it goes down. Right about at this point, it's 6 feet. And this is a dormer right here. And this is also a dormer because this dashed line that you see here is what I call a bay, a dormer. It's a large dormer. From this point to this point is 18 feet, and it goes up 9 feet. Now, these are very high ceilings. So based on what I've observed, that you have at least at this point a ceiling that's probably 9.5, 10 feet, and then it slopes down to approximately 6 feet along the wall here, going down like this.
So how much of the, how much of the attic ceiling height is above 7 feet? If that floor area is 942 square feet.
I think that 942 square feet, would you say is above 9 feet? 'Cause
Oh,
that's-
absolutely. I would say that.
And there's some more space that's less than that.
Because you're treading on dangerous territory, because if the area of this floor, and I don't think it does, but if the area of this floor that's over 7 feet in ceiling height is more than 1/3 of the floor below area, then this counts as a floor, not an attic. This is really not a floor now. This is considered to be an attic story. If it counts as a floor, then you have a building that doesn't conform, because you can't have a 3-story building in wood frame construction unless it's sprinklered. And I don't think this building is sprinklered. So
That's a very good point, yes.
I don't think that this, you should calculate it, because it'll become an issue when you file for building permit.
Yes, that's an excellent
But the area
point.
of the floor that has a ceiling height greater than 7 feet can't exceed more than 1/3 of the area of the floor below. So I think if we...
Well, the floor below would be this, from this point to that point, and I'd have to do
Well,
the
the floor
calculation.
below is 2,270 square feet, so 1/3 of 2,270 is about
700.
700 and something
Yeah.
square feet. So if your cutoff is 700 and something square feet with a ceiling height more than 7 feet, the area where the ceiling is under 7 feet doesn't count.
Right. No, that's an excellent point.
I mean, that was my concern.
Yep.
Well, you know, because we've had this in other applications where people are trying to use that
Yeah.
attic story. When does it become another floor? When it goes over that 1/3 threshold.
That's correct.
So you don't want to have a building here that has 3 stories with no sprinkler system, because you can't have a multifamily dwelling of 3 stories in wood frame without sprinklers. So.
All right, that's kind of a separate issue. Again, my client will agree to comply with the building code, whatever it is.
No, that's
But
an
the
excellent
floor
point. I
area,
agree.
but the floor area exists.
Yes.
So it would be nice to have a calculation of that, so that we know that we're not wasting everybody's time.
Why would we be wasting people's?
Well, if we approve it, and then they file for a building permit, and then it's turned down because you can't actually put a dwelling unit there because you can't use that space without putting a
Well,
sprinkler
he would
system
put
in the
a,
building.
they're saying they would put a sprinkler system in.
Well, if,
Well,
No.
No?
I doubt if they would do that.
I honestly, I've never, asked Mr. Betts if he wanted to do, because I never went to that level of detail on this.
It's only an issue if that floor, and I don't think it does, the area of that floor exceeds 1/3 of the area below with a ceiling height over 7 feet.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the answer is we don't know.
Right, we don't know.
We don't
And from the
know.
testimony,
We don't know.
And from the testimony, there's very little of this, I think what you're saying is very little of this floor area is, under the slope where it gets down to 6 feet, right?
Yes,
It sounds like
that's-
the
it's a high
vast
ceiling,
majority of
yes.
the 900 feet is above 7.
I would have to go and measure it and just verify what your point is.
It is close. Maybe he would choose to have a little less space or something, or
But
the alternative to sprinklers.
if it's a floor, if it exceeds it and it's a floor, then that's a bulk variance that they'd need, because he'd be a
3 stories.
three-story in a two-story zone, or 2.5-story zone.
It'd be a bulk,
Well, we're not
pre-existing
asking,
non-conforming bulk condition.
Right.
They're not changing the height, it's what it is, but they would seek, and we would probably consider making it a pre-existing non-conforming structure in that regard. The height's not changing, right? They're not adding a story, right, Sal?
So the answer is really no.
Yeah.
since the building is and has been inspected numerous times by DCA, I would tend to think it probably just fits within the 1/3 limit, but we haven't
wouldn't
made
make
that
that assumption.
calculation.
I wouldn't make that assumption.
No?
No, because if you're making this a separate dwelling unit, you're now changing the character of the building. And to me, then, you have to look at this, what does the building code tell you then if this is an individual dwelling unit, not an attic? Heck, I lived in a house in Bloomfield where the attic was finished, and it was more than 1/3 of the area of the floor below. But it existed, and it was part of a single-family house. It wasn't a separate dwelling unit. I think if I changed that and wanted to have it as a separate dwelling unit, then I would have an issue. So I think it's something that it's important to look at, because potentially you don't want to, look, worst-case scenario, we approve it, the town approves it, you occupy it, something bad happens, and somebody discovers that, hey, that shouldn't have even been a fifth unit, and then everybody gets in real trouble.
That's an excellent point. I
But
agree.
isn't that the issue for code enforcement? Is that something that we stop here, or do we note it as a contingency on our resolution if we were to approve it?
I guess we could. I mean, it's my area of expertise, so that's why I'm sort of tuned into this attic thing, because this is not the first time that we've had this come up. And I think it's an important thing to understand, whether that attic is an attic or is that attic a floor.
Is it responsible of us to potentially contingently approve this?
Yeah, I would think that's certainly within the board's purview, yes, Jeff. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Gruhl, do you have any particular opinion on that?
I agree with Mr. Dwyer,
Okay.
but I think it's an issue. It's an issue generically.
Okay, Mr. Rinda?
I agree also.
Okay, all right. So does that persuade the board that we can, if we were to approve this, we'd make this an explicit contingency to our approval? That way we can move on with the application.
Thank you. All right, I just wanted to have you just look at the site plan and just describe the parking right now and how many parking spaces there are.
Okay, what I did is I designed, based on the number of bedrooms and the proposed penthouse unit, I did a layout that shows 11 spaces that are 9 by 18 feet, and there's 4 spaces in an existing garage. I have a backup of 20 feet, and then along here, there's 4 spaces at right angles to the lot line here, and then there's 1, 2, and 3 spaces along the house. And this is the driveway, and based on what I can see, there's more than adequate space to maneuver the cars in and out.
Is there any change to the configuration or the outline of the parking? I don't see any.
The only thing, those, you drew in parking spaces, they're not presently marked, are they?
No, that's correct. They're not marked parking spaces. And what I'm trying to do is, if you can look at the zoning chart where it says maximum impervious surface coverage, I didn't want to increase any of the lot coverage, so I worked with the existing driveway, because the existing lot here has approximately 44% impervious coverage, which is a little over what your zoning requires.
But you're not changing what's there?
No, I am not.
Okay.
If the board has no more questions, I would call the next witness.
Do we have more questions for Mr. Dobson?
Relating-
The plans reflect that it says 1 additional parking space proposed, but is that 11 existing now or not?
All right, right now, we just have the parking area. There's no markings on the property. There's, 4 dwelling units, and there actually, I think, are only 6 cars there right now, because this is very close to the train station, and people often manage with 1 car per unit. But we just drew in parking spaces to show how many we could park, correct?
That's correct.
That's not reflective of any yellow lines, or currently there's asphalt there, but there's no drawn-out parking spaces.
Also, there's bumper stops in 7 of the 11 proposed spaces. There's a stop here, a stop here, a stop here. So I'm formalizing what the parking spaces would be, because right now, as the attorney has related, there's no markings for the parking. So,
If I may, Mr. Dobson,
Yes.
are you going to address some of our comments in our memo regarding the parking layout and the driveway aisles? And it's our memo dated October 31st. And there were a number of questions and comments that were made regarding the efficiency and the feasibility of some of the parking spaces, and that how the parking is in conformance with the design standards of the ordinance, and just a number of comments with respect to that and clarifications. Do you think that you may be able to respond to that, or is someone else, another professional, going to be able to respond to those?
I think our planner might discuss this a little bit. We're not saying the parking spaces are 10 by 20 foot with 23-foot aisle. It obviously isn't. But our client, Mr. Betts, could tell you how it works, and the planner will address the RESIS standards.
Okay, and also the layout of the spaces. For example, there seems to be several spaces that are in front of the garage, where you're counting spaces within the garage. And it's just so that we know what's feasible, what is feasible in terms of parking, and whether it triggers any kind of variance or design waiver.
It might trigger a design waiver. We acknowledge that. Currently, Mr. Betts' 3 tenants each have 1 car. So there's kind of no issue right now. We are, again, very close to the train station. If a tenant would have 2 cars, that apartment could be allocated 1 in the garage and 1 in front of it, and within 1 family, they'd have to jiggle it. But right now, there are fewer cars in that lot than we're showing spaces.
Ms. Birkenwald, the question, 10 spaces are required according to our expert, Ms. Gruhl. Do you have 10 spaces there for parking?
We show 11 spaces. They're not exactly to your design standards. The garage spaces have another space in front of them, or some of them, right? Not all.
So maybe the architect can
One of them
respond to
does.
this. What are usable parking spaces? So like you said, if you have a parking space right in front of a garage space, well then one of those can't be used, at least.
Well, there's a setback of 20 feet in front of these garage spaces. Does that answer?
It's actually enough room.
How many parking spaces do you have, again?
There's 11 parking spaces on this design.
Do they look like 11 regular-sized parking spaces?
Yes.
I think it's less the size of the space than the drive aisles.
Right, there's a 10-foot drive aisle.
I think that the drive aisle that goes down the
two-way.
side of
The driveway goes down the side of the lot right here. I'm sorry. This is where the driveway goes right down like this. Almost the
Right,
top.
and that's 10 foot in width, and it's 2-way, according to the plan.
Okay, well, this is really a one-way because of the fact that it varies in width. Like right here, it's 10 feet 9 inches, and what is required for a two-way is 18 feet minimum.
So where's the other road that takes you back out?
What happens is you just use this driveway, you come in, and then you turn in here, you turn in here, and you turn in here. And this area right in front of the garage is for K-turns, where any car that's parked here would back up and turn around and come out this way.
And somebody's coming in at the same time, how do they coordinate that?
Well, what I've noticed is that the tenants that are here have worked something out, and it seems to work very well from what I've seen, because I've been at the site several times.
So those parking spaces marked 1, 2, and 3 on the plan are existing spaces?
There are cars that park along here, but they're not striped or marked out, yes.
Okay.
I've actually parked my vehicle along here, and there's been cars just coming through, so it works.
And just to clarify, our memo was intended when we said that there were spaces in front of the garage. What we saw out there were parking spaces in front of the garage at this point. Now, I guess what you're trying to do is formalize a parking plan.
Right, but what I've done is I've pulled the parking spaces, you see this dimension here, 20 feet away, so
Yes.
they don't, congregate in front of this existing garage.
So the informal arrangement where there was parking in front of the garage is not being proposed now.
That's correct.
You are changing that and you are making those other spaces. Okay, that clarifies.
We're showing that there could be 11 cars parked here with some deviation from the normal standard of aisle width. But we're talking about just 5 dwelling units, and you're not going to have a car going in and coming out at the same time. They'll have to wait and take turns.
Okay, so you'll be there to make sure that you don't have a car coming in and out at the same time. I'm being sarcastic. What you're saying is you need a parking design waiver. is what you're saying,
Yes.
right?
Aside from the concern about conflicts of cars leaving and coming at the same time, vehicles that are parked in the back of the lot, is there enough space for them to physically turn around and pull out? And the same thing with the parallel spaces up against the building. How are they going to be able to turn around so that they can pull out onto the street, or will they be required to back out down the long driveway?
Well, the way that would work is, let's say you have an automobile parked here. What they could do is go here, and you see this 20 foot by the whole width of the driveway here? They could go in here and pull a K-turn and then come out this way.
Okay, have you put a turning template on that to see if there is enough space to make those turns if there's a car parked in those last spaces?
Yes. I'm confident they
Mr.
would.
Dobson, when you and I met at the property, did we both park there and do that, I believe?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I have a Windstar, which is, I guess, 16 feet long and all that, so it definitely, it works.
Okay.
That's an excellent question, though. I appreciate it.
There were other comments, questions that we had in our memo that I guess would be more appropriate for you, Mr. Dobson, than your planner. For example, number 9, it says the plans provided indicate a bluestone and slate block border along the driveway. Okay, this is not currently in place. Is this proposed to be constructed?
My understanding is this is the existing, there's like a wall
Wait a
here.
minute, see it
And,
up there.
And Mr. Betts has informed me that if it's necessary to remove, demolish this, he would do that, because I brought this up last summer with him.
We weren't proposing to do any change to the exterior. If the board wants it done, we'll certainly be willing to do it, but we weren't proposing, and I think also the planner has some photographs that might address your questions.
What is the line that's parallel to the proposed blue wall that reaches from about halfway into the site out to the road? What does that line represent? Just to the right of the
Yes,
wall.
I see what it is. This line here, it has, this is a meaningless line. It doesn't represent anything. I think what it was is that there was going to be a note, and it just showed up on the CAD file, but that line does not represent.
I didn't hear that, sir. You didn't have the microphone.
Okay, that line doesn't represent anything. I think it was the way it was drawn up in the CAD. It was like a note, and it never was deleted. But this line here that was just pointed out is non-existent. It is not construction.
We apologize.
And I apologize.
Just curious.
Well, I'm looking, now I'm confused. I'm looking at a survey, a boundary survey that was submitted by Pronesti Surveying. I'm assuming this is probably what exists. And it shows that block border wall, and then it shows the asphalt driveway as if it's inside. So as if there's space between the block border, whatever that is, that block border, and the edge of the driveway. It's a little ambiguous. That line does show on your site plan, but your dimensions of driving aisle are taken to the block wall. So is there a space between there that's not paved, that's going to be paved? That's where I'm getting confused.
I don't think there is.
We weren't proposing to add any pavement or to make any exterior change.
Look at this drawing.
What he's saying is the paved area does not go up to the block wall, but the dimension that you're providing for the driveway does.
Correct.
And if you look at one of our photos behind our memo, you'll see that there's a little area there that's not paved.
I would have to say, because if you look at my drawing, our site plan was taken from information of the surveyors. The way I would interpret this, and that's an excellent point you're bringing up, that this has to be the edge of the asphalt driveway.
I can't see what you're pointing at.
now looking at the Pronesti survey that
Yeah.
you brought up, so we're just looking at it.
Right, so
Your
there's
question
a
is
driveway, and then there's the wall, and there's a space between. So the question is,
My interpretation, that has to be the edge of the asphalt.
right, but on your plan, it's shown as if you're assuming that that's paved because you're taking the width to the wall as if that's the driveway, but part of that isn't paved right now.
That's where there's grass median. It's a grass median.
Yeah, it shows like it's grass.
It's just, it's a grass median.
Well, that's the wall. This is what I'm talking about.
I have Ian Betts. Would you want
Sir, would you
sworn,
please raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you'll give here this evening is the whole truth? Yes, sir. Please state your name and
You
address.
need to give
for
him the
record.
microphone.
Ian Betts, 72 3rd Street, South Orange.
Is this your house, Mr. Betts?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Is it
sir.
only yours, or are you a co-owner?
I'm sorry?
Are you a co-owner still, or a sole owner?
Co-owner, sole owner, sir.
Thank you.
Are we talking about this line, folks?
Let's talk about this one.
Okay, what this is this is just a grass field right here. The driveway comes and then it cuts over and then it goes along the wall towards the back. I don't know if I'm making this clear for everybody, but this space right here is all grass. I know that because I cut it plenty of times.
Okay, that's clear, but the problem is that the site plan that we have, S1, shows a driveway width that includes that part that's grass.
What's also unclear is the area immediately adjacent to the house. It looks like there's a grass
same thing
area
there,
there,
too.
and now there's proposed parking spaces there, and it looks like where those three parking spaces are, the pavement area is going to have to be widened closer to the house as well, according to the site plan.
Yes, sir, you're talking about the grass area?
Yes.
Adjacent to the house, and across from it, that is also, as we just discussed, grass area. And I see here that the parking spot is over there. We have 3 parking cars that usually park along there, and it's of course not perfectly squared off, as this indicates, but those cars fit in nicely along the asphalt line.
So by squaring that area off, paving that area, then you are going to be...
squared off, but it isn't squared off at this time.
Right, but what's proposed is to pave that area to square it off, which would increase your lot coverage.
Sir, I'm not proposing that, but if it's desired,
Well, that's what's on
I
the
would
plan.
do it.
That's why the question came up. That's what's shown, so.
Okay, you're talking about this drawing as being proposed? And over here on this side, that's all grass. If it would be necessary to make it asphalt, I would make it asphalt. Am I answering your question, sir?
Well, yeah, I mean, what's proposed is that area being paved, I'm assuming, is what's shown on the plan.
I don't think that we were proposing that. Is that correct? No.
You need the microphone.
I'm sorry?
You need more microphone.
Any person speaks, they have to have a microphone.
Very good.
No, we weren't proposing to pave that. We're just showing the clearances, the dimensions here.
So you propose, those 3 cars that are going to park adjacent to the house will be parking on the grass area?
No, sir. They fit nicely just along the asphalt area.
So you have maybe 6 feet of space, not 10 that I was worried about.
Well, there's a picture there on the Higher Gruel report that shows you how they're parked along the edge of the asphalt there. And
That's correct. This is probably one of my cars, sir.
all right, so you got a couple cars parked alongside of the house. That gives you a sense of what they intend to keep. And yes, so you can then pull 1 car past, but you can't pull 2 cars past. That's the design waiver that they would need.
But as you see, part of the parking, the parallel parking along the building is on grass, and part of it is on the pavement.
On the drawing that we have, yeah.
Well, no, not only that. If you look at how now Mr. Betts uses that area, if you look at our photo, you'll see that our photo shows what he's testified to, but it shows that those cars are parked partially on grass and partially on pavement.
If they are parked on grass at that time, ma'am, it was somebody just didn't know how to park, because that's not normally the case.
Well, then it really reduces the width of going through there even as a one-way.
As if I could say, you know, all the years I've been living there, it's never really been an issue going up and down that driveway. It's, I mean, plenty of space. If it was ever made it tough, it would be this parking spot right here. If the one closest to the street would make it tough, but it wasn't ever that tough.
Look, I can see from the photograph itself, you could get one, you could have cars parked along the side of the house, and you could still slip one car past. That could be done.
Effectively, as a-
Provided this photograph.
This is from Higher Gruel.
It's in a report, but effectively, currently, it's 4 units. Those 4 units will require 8 parking spaces. The 4 spaces in the garage, and then the 4 spaces, you know, in front of the garage, take care of that issue. Cars parked along here, you know, they're parked there. I mean, but those aren't really sufficient, that's not really a sufficient area for parking. So what's proposed in the site plan is squaring that area off and widening it to create those 3 additional spaces, 2 of which are required for the additional unit that you're proposing.
I would have no problem doing that, sir, if that's what's required.
But in doing that, now you're looking for another variance because you already exceed your allowable lot coverage by 4%. And then paving that area and squaring it off will increase your lot coverage.
Yeah, it will, but how much? Minimally? This area?
Well, it's pretty significant, actually.
Well, you also have it on this side.
So you're going to have to do it on the left side, too, is what you're saying.
Right.
Ian, you now usually do park alongside the building, don't you, people?
Yes,
seem to prefer the
actually,
inside.
my car, my truck are usually over here alongside, and the tenants have the parking spots in the back,
Do you
in the garage.
park on the asphalt, or is it partly on the?
Oh, no, if I'm parking, it's always on the asphalt. But sometimes, you know, one of my tenants, his son-in-law come and he usually kind of misses it and parks on the grass.
It's and you now have 3 tenants, and how many vehicles?
Let's see,
tenants have?
one tenant, family of 3, they have 2 vehicles, and then the rest folks have 1 car each.
So right now, your tenants have a total of 5 vehicles, and then there's yours.
That's correct.
Okay, so they would require 10. Does this board wish, they weren't planning to widen, well, it says on the site plan that they would widen it, but the testimony is...
The calculations don't reflect that.
Right. So does this board particularly wish to impose a condition that they add extra pavement or not, and then give them a design waiver? I guess that's what it comes down to.
Well,
I'd prefer to hear the,
Let me hear Mr. Descalzo.
I'd prefer to hear the rest of the application. I really want to hear from the planner. So, I definitely have some concerns about this subject matter, but I want to hear how it all gets wrapped up before I start.
Before we start
wheeling
getting
and
into the
dealing.
minutia, we want to hear the planning stuff, the broader stuff. That makes sense. Is that okay?
Does everybody have one copy of your photographs? Because I did get your reports, but I didn't get them.
Okay, this is, I'm sorry. This is a memo that I believe you had, and, yeah, the photos are behind the memo.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, do we have any more questions for the architect? No more questions? Let me make sure I went over the rule report here.
There are other questions that we have, for example, recycling and garbage, but I would agree it may be helpful if the planning testimony.
Comes up.
Could I add a point to the issue on the parking and the impervious coverage? There are paver systems that could mitigate and reduce any kind of impervious coverage. So if that is an issue, I would certainly get into that.
Okay.
To minimize impervious coverage.
Let's hear from the planner we're going to take a break, then we'll hear from the planner, and then if we're disposed favorably after that, then we'll get into the minutia of pavers and parking.
Can I ask one more question?
And dumpstering.
Of the architect?
And one more question for Mr. Dobson.
Mr. Dobson?
Mr. Dobson? Mr. Dobson? Mr. Dobson? We have one more question for you.
Yes.
Is there any lighting in this parking area?
Yes, there is. There's lighting on drawing, there are floodlights on drawing A3. There's existing floodlights right on the corner of the building that provides lighting for the...
Existing?
Yes.
Are they shining into the neighbor's property?
No, they are not.
Are they shielded so that they're not shining into the neighbor's property?
They're oriented, the terrain goes up, so there's no, from what I can see, there's also fences. I don't think that goes into the neighboring...
So your testimony is what's there is staying?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to take a 10-minute break. There's a terrible aerial. Okay, we're back in session.
Did you hear that? She's so animated. Okay, now you
This works?
Looks like you want to be a witness, right?
Lisa Phillips.
Could you please raise your right hand, and could you swear that the testimony that you give at this board is the whole truth?
I do.
Please state your name and address.
Lisa Phillips, Phillips, 19 Blackfoot, that's one word, Trail, Oakland, New Jersey.
Thank you.
Ms. Phillips, are you a licensed planner in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I have 27 years of experience. I've been licensed since 1992.
And where did you go to school?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree from Pennsylvania State University in city planning.
And have you testified before the boards of adjustment in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I've never testified in South Orange, but I typically testify in Hudson, Bergen, Morris, Passaic County.
And do you represent any boards?
Yes, I'm presently the Borough of Bogota planner. I'm the Borough of Hohoka zoning officer, and I'm the Borough of Cliffside Park zoning board of adjustment planner.
Okay, do we have any questions? No. Okay, we accept you as an expert in planning.
Thank you.
All right, direct your attention to the property 72 3rd Street. Have you been asked to study that property?
Yes.
And have you done photographs? I would like to pass out, I have 5 copies, and these photographs are the ones on your board?
Yes.
And then I also have land use and density.
Right. I apologize. The land use and density, my copier gave me problems today. It's a color, so I only have 5 of those. So if you could share those. But the photographs, I believe I have 7 or 8 copies.
Let's mark those, Elaine. What are the put the photographs in first?
What are you handing out? These are the land use and density ones?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have.
What do you want to put in first?
Where are we going first? With the photographs?
Yeah, the photographs.
And so the photographs first.
Wait a minute.
And the land use and density second.
So,
Hold on a minute. The photographs that are on that board are the photographs that are in this exhibit?
They are. Yes.
And there's
6 pages.
6 pages of
11,
photographs.
I believe there's 11 actual photographs on 6 pages.
11 photos, 6 pages. We're going to call that A5, Jen?
6.
There's 6. We can share.
We can share. We'll share, that's fine.
It's not extra, we don't have any.
I'll share with them.
Okay, so that's A6. Are we introducing
Density.
something else also right now?
The density in land use.
That's this
has
one
to-
sheet?
Yes.
And what is it that you want?
It's an existing land use, multiple family land use exhibit. It shows all the other 2 and 3 families in the area, as well as a density calculation for each of those properties. So I would call it an exhibit.
That was prepared by you?
Yes, it was.
Okay. That'll be A7?
So I'd like to start with the photographs. Can we do that? In discussing the photographs, I think it helps in the discussion of the parking layout. Much was discussed about the orientation of the spaces along the side of the building as well as the rear, and I think the photo board shows, a typical day that exists there now with the parking situation. I had no problem maneuvering in and out. I have a small sedan. There was parking along the perimeter of the building the day that I was there. I circled the property several times in the neighborhood, came back and parked 2 or 3 times within, maybe an hour period. I went back there this evening, there still was no problem getting in and out. So it is an existing condition. I understand that we're going to be exacerbating the situation to a degree by adding 1 unit, but I think that the situation, the fact that the landlord lives there right now, I think helps the situation. So as the photographs depict, not only the site, but also the surrounding neighborhood. And you can see that it's typically an older style, architectural style in the neighborhood, and this building really is, is representative of the architectural style that the architect had discussed. Mr. Betts has taken a lot of time and consideration in keeping the architectural style. There's no aluminum siding or anything like that. He's put a lot of time and effort into this building. So to talk about the existing land use and density, I think that goes to the heart of the matter. The fact that we are, excuse me, I have allergies. The fact that we are increasing the density, I think for the board's edification, when looking at the zoning for this property, it does allow 2 families on 6,000 square feet. Now that would be representative of a 14 dwelling units per acre when you look at a density calculation. With the proposed 5th unit, we are only proposing 12.5 dwelling units. And if you look at the surrounding neighborhood, even though there's only 1 3-family, the rest are all, 2 family and 1 family, you can see the range of densities, and that we're actually much less than some of the surrounding properties. So in terms of the intensification of the property.
Can I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
Yes.
But you just gave us a ratio, and I wasn't able to write it down as
I'm
fast
sorry.
as you said it. So could you back up and do that again?
Yes, what the borough ordinance permits?
You talked about the 2-family being allowed in 6,000 square feet.
Right, so a 2-family dwelling in this zone, in the RB zone, is allowed to be placed on a 6,000 square foot property.
Right.
Okay, so that actually, when you calculate out the density for that, that represents 14 units per acre.
So you're comparing density per acre, in other words?
Yes, because I think when you're looking at the fact that we are intensifying the density, that's what you have to look at. What is our impact, negative or positive, to the neighborhood? What is the impact to the master plan or the zoning ordinance? And what I'm trying to point out is that the borough or the township has already contemplated that this area could be developed with 6,000 square foot lots with 2 families on them, which represents 14 units to the acre. We have a lot size, and I think you have to relate this in your deliberation, is that we have a lot size that's 3 times the requirement. Our lot size is nearly 18,000 square feet in an area and a zone that permits 6,000 square feet. So when you look at the overall development, we're only going to be at 12.5 dwelling units per acre. So in terms of the negative impact to the neighborhood, if you look at some of the other 2 families and the 3-family that are within a 200-foot radius, they range from 7.7 next door, that's a 2-family on a larger lot, all the way up to 25 units to the acre in some of the other 2 families, because they're on much smaller properties. And with the much smaller property, even though it's only a 2-family, you may have parking issues. So I think that's why the borough is trying to keep the 2-family with 6,000 square feet and not have less, although a lot of these properties are less than the 6,000 square feet. I did an analysis of that as well.
If we're looking at, I'm sorry, because
No, go ahead.
I'm losing you again. If we're looking at A7,
Yes,
and we're seeing some of these lots have the dwelling unit per acre figure on them, correct?
yes, they do. That's what the
And some-
typeface is.
And some don't.
Because I only did the multifamily, the 2-family and the 3-family, because really, we're not consistent or typical of like a single-family development. So what I tried to show is that 2 families are permitted. There's even a 3-family, which is along, I think, the commercial corridor, but it's still a 3-family. So I was just trying to show that there's other 2-family or other multifamilies in the neighborhood and how we compare. Because I don't think we're really comparable to a single-family.
Is that 3-family on, there seems to be just 1. Is that 3-family on Valley permitted?
It's in a different zone, actually.
It's in a different zone. It's in a commercial zone.
It's in the B2 zone, I believe. Yeah, the B2 zone. The zone lines aren't shown on this exhibit.
Are all the rest of the lots in the same zone?
The ones across the street are in the RC, or RC1 zone, and then the rest are in the RB zone.
So they have do those zones have different densities?
Well, in the B2, I don't believe it's
Yes.
permitted, the residential. But what I'm trying to show is when you're out there living in the neighborhood, you don't see zone lines. I understand that it does have certain rationale when you're looking at things, and there is a cutoff, but when you're looking at the overall impact, you're not going down the street and seeing a zone line at your next-door neighbor's property. You're looking at the overall impact to the neighborhood. And the fact that there is two two-families and a three-family along Valley Street that are interspersed with commercial. You know, there is some type of mixing in that neighborhood. It's not a pure neighborhood in terms of there's other uses that are non-conforming in the B zone, just as this is a non-conforming in the RB zone. But when you drive down the street...
Are the white lots that have no color commercial?
Commercial, except for the PQ. I left white, which is our property.
Could you look at it another way, where if you need 6,000 square feet to do a two-family house in this zone, theoretically, just in raw numbers, 18,000 square feet would let you do 3 two-family units, if you could divide that lot.
If you had the width, right. 'cause
Basically
you'd
what
be
she's
undersized,
saying,
yes.
right, yeah.
I mean, I think that's a little more direct relationship calculation than sort of backing into units per acre, because a two-family house on a small lot is going to relate to a higher units per acre than a two-family house on a slightly bigger lot, but it's still a two-family house.
No, I understand that, but we're also dealing with a unique situation that we have the largest lot in the area.
Right.
We have a house that's existing that's well over 100 years old. You know, we're just trying to be able to maintain that. We're not physically enlarging the structure to accommodate this unit. There's a situation that occurs now where the person on the second floor that has access to the third floor to use it has to go out into the main corridor to use it. There's some extra square footage up there. So I'm not saying that there's no issues with it, but what I'm saying is you have to look at the negative impact to the neighborhood. And what I'm saying...
I'm not arguing with you. What I'm saying
Right.
is that the fact of the matter is this lot is 3 times what you would need basically to have a conforming lot, a conforming two-family lot in this zone.
That's right. But I don't know
So
if
if
we meet all
this
the
was
other...
if this was a lot you could divide into 3, you could actually have 6 units.
Possibly, yes. You
Except-
might need some bulk variance.
Just in gross floor area.
Just an area, but.
Right,
that-
just an area,
lot-
not front, yeah, exactly.
Lot width and
Right.
and things like that.
No, I understand
think it should
this
be pointed out, though,
particular
that the determination for 1 and 2 families in the RB zone is not a dwelling unit per acre.
Right. That's why I was...
It's 1 family, 2 family.
Right.
Based on lot size
Right.
and lot width.
And that's what I'd like you to address, precisely that. You're asking us to look at dwelling units per acre, but the ordinance plainly states it's a two-family zone. So why should we look at this as dwelling units per acre as opposed to single, 1 family, 2 family, 4 family, et cetera?
Because it's a very unique situation where, I mean, when I get into the statutory criteria, I talk about how this site is particularly suited. It's a very unique site. It's oversized. It's 3 times the size. It exists now legally as a 4-family. Because we're not looking for a physical expansion of it, we're looking for an increase in the density. So I thought, as all planners do, when you look at residential development, you look at it in terms of density, not just the use. So what I'm trying to point out is that the overall intensification of the site by density standards is not any greater, it's less than some of the surroundings that may be 2-family in structure and design, but the actual intensity by density is greater. So I'm just trying to show that there's no negative impact, and the fact that we do have a unique situation because it is an older home that has existed for many years there legally. It is much oversized. So it's a very unique situation, and I think that's what the board has to really deliberate is.
I think what the board's asking, if I may, is you keep referring to there's no impact on the neighborhood, but don't you also have to talk about the negative impact upon the zone plan and ordinance?
Right. Well, I haven't gotten into really, I just kind of jumped into talking about it, but I didn't go through my whole report that talks about, you know, the statutory criteria. But I did, in order to evaluate this, I did look at the master plan. I think there was a vision plan for the downtown area that I think is nearby. I looked at the renewal or the redevelopment study and some of the plans, or the reports for the plans that are being proposed across the street at Valley and Third on the train station side. So I did look at some documents to get a sense of the general area. So as you know, the proposal is to convert third floor or attic space to a fifth apartment. We're looking for a D2, which would be considered an expansion of a non-conforming use. So we have to talk about special reasons and positive and negative criteria. So in terms of the site is particularly suited, I think addresses the special reasons. As I stated before, the subject site is particularly suited due to its oversized lot area and the proposed density being lower than surrounding properties. Additionally, the applicant has not proposed a physical expansion of the building and has only two non-conforming conditions related to the size of the structure. And I think when you look at intensification of the site, usually you have other variances. I understand we have a parking issue here, but we don't have a lot of issues with coverage. We're only over by 4%. It's a pre-existing condition. We also have a non-conforming front yard that's very minor. I believe the front yard setback is required to be 25 feet. We're at 24 feet. So this property doesn't have a lot of issues that go with over-intensification of a site. We don't have a lot of coverage issues or anything like that. And I think I can address the parking issue with the RSIS standards. The RSIS does allow de minimis waivers to be granted for properties within, they allow for alternate parking standards based on local conditions. And I'd like to quote from the RSIS, because I think the fact that this site is within walking distance of a few bus routes and certainly the train station would go to mitigate any concern that the board may have about parking standards and what we actually have on the site presently. The RSIS states, factors affecting the minimum number of parking spaces include household characteristics, availability of mass transit, urban versus suburban location, and available off-site parking resources. The subject site is located less than a quarter mile from the train station, and bus service is provided along Valley Street and at the train station. Therefore, even if the one additional space cannot adequately be accommodated, and that was what the 11 space that we talked about, to conform to the township's experts' requests, the fact that the site is within easy walking distance of mass transit should go to mitigate any of the board's concerns. So I think that addresses the positive criteria. Additionally, we do affirm several of the goals of the master plan that talk about protecting and preserving attractive neighborhoods as well as existing densities. The proposal is in keeping with these goals, and...
Ms. Phillips,
yes.
You're going way faster than I can go here. Could you just back up and go over a little bit more closely what you figure are the special reasons?
The special reasons are, one, that the site is particularly suited.
First of all, and I think the initial question is this a D2 or not?
Yeah.
Or a D1? Could you talk about that?
Well, I'm arguing it as a D1 in terms of site suitability. A D2, really what you would have to show is that the problems associated with the increase or the deviation can be accommodated on the site. So I can argue it both ways. I think we have rationale for both.
Well,
obviously, it's a higher standard.
What's your primary request for relief?
I believe it's an expansion of a non-conforming use.
So you think it's a D2 variance?
I do.
And you think it's not a D1?
Pardon me?
And you think it's not a D1?
Right. Right. But I can still show site suitability in terms of the fact that we have an oversized lot, that we're in a neighborhood that have densities greater than ours. So I think that goes to the particular suitability of the site. However,
Let's
when you
just
look...
focus on that for a second, because I
Okay.
think that's something that we really need to think about.
Okay.
Because if it's a D2, you know the burden of proof is less than if it's a D1.
I understand that.
Right? So if the board is convinced that it's an expansion of a pre-existing non-conforming, then you don't necessarily have to prove you're inserting a brand-new use in the zone, because under D2 analysis, the site has already proven it can accommodate the use.
Right.
Right? So you have a lesser burden of proof. You
But
don't
I
have to
haven't heard the planning report from the...
Can I just ask my
plan-
question here?
Yes.
So you don't necessarily have to show site suitability under D2, because
know.
the site's already shown it can accommodate it. But the difference between the D2 and the D1 is what?
Is that what we have to show is that it can accommodate any problems that would be associated with the increase of
But
the deviation?
isn't it true that if it's substantial modification of a D2, then the courts say that's a D1? That's the standard, right?
There's different cases on it. I've always found that you could just argue it as a D2. I don't know if this rises to, I don't know what the level of substantial is.
That's for the board to consider.
Yes.
If Professor Cox was here, he would tell us that's the standard.
Okay. I'm not a lawyer, so I'm a planner that understands some of the legal cases, but I'm not a lawyer, so
So
whatever,
why
I
is
would
it-
like to know the
why
board's
is it
opinion then.
Why is it that this application should be considered as a D2 as opposed to a D1?
Because we're a legal, non-conforming four-family, and we're expanding that by the fifth unit. We're not doing a physical expansion, we're doing an expansion of the number of dwelling units. So to me, that's an expansion. And we've determined, as discussed this evening, excuse me, as we've discussed this evening, that it is considered a legal, pre-existing, non-conforming four-family.
So your argument is that it's a D2, not a D1, because it's not a substantial modification of a pre-existing non-conforming. It's just a rather less than substantial modification of a pre-existing non-conforming.
I'm going to defer to the lawyer on that. As a planner, I would say it's a D2. And I don't know what the level of substantial would be.
We don't know, nobody knows, because
Okay,
it's up to
well-
the facts, right? I'm just trying to point out for the board's sake, you know, there's a distinction between
Okay,
the two
well-
groups.
I guess at the end of the day, they need to argue only one, though, right? They can't argue them both.
Well, a lot of people argue, try to argue both, try to argue D2 because it's a lesser burden. If not, then they say, well, we still also qualify under D1.
Okay.
But it's supposed to be a harder road to hoe under D1 because you're putting a brand-new use in a zone that doesn't allow.
Okay.
Well, I think we'd be hard-pressed to say that they're putting a brand-new use, given the fact that this building's already a non-conforming building, and
And the
their
thing that makes it
proposal...
non-conforming is the extra units.
Right, and the fact of the matter is, they're not physically changing the building to get to the fifth unit. If we had a change in footprint, or a change in building size, or a change in building height, then we might be more in the D1 category. To me, this is about as D2 as you could get, as it being a less than substantial change. I mean, if you're asking my non-lawyer's opinion.
If I may, since it was deferred to a lawyer, I look at this as a D2 because we have 4 residential dwelling units. We're asking for a 5th. It's not a physical expansion. It's basically taking rooms that already exist on the 3rd floor and saying that could be a legal separate unit.
We understand that, Councilor. Can you just cite a case? Do you have a case that's on point or even relevant? I mean, we know what your opinion is.
I did photocopy, the statute, which I could read to you. I don't know if you want me to. But we also are presenting proof of a D1 to substantially show that we meet the criteria for a D1. But if the board wants to consider both, we really think this is a D2. We're expanding the number of dwelling units. As a reason to grant this for particular suitability, we are not increasing the size of the building. We're not going to drill anything outside. There'll be no dust, no construction outside the building. The rooms already exist upstairs, and hopefully they'll be 1/3 the size floor, as Mr. Don pointed out, so we don't need to install sprinklers, but we're not expanding the footprint of the building. We're not adding any asphalt. So I see the statute states an expansion of a non-conforming use. And I think it's not a physical expansion, but it is an expansion of the number of dwelling units. And that really, to me, fits right under D2. D1, and I'll just read it. It says, a use or principal structure in a district restricted against such use or principal. Well, it's already a 2-family district, and we have a prior non-conforming 4-family. So for that reason, I feel, reading the statute, I think it really does fit under the statutory D2 criteria. But Lisa Phillips will give you reasons under D1, because I think it also meets that standard of particular suitability. But it, I think very definitely will meet the D2 standard. I don't know of any case specifically like this, and I think that's typical in land use. You don't always have a case. I'll turn it back to our planner.
I'm sure there are tons of cases, but we just don't have one. Right.
Okay, let's hear from the planner.
Yeah.
Were you still
I
making
didn't know,
your
I thought you meant
case?
you were a planner, I'm sorry.
No, you.
Yeah, I was going to go on to the, so
Go
I
ahead.
discussed the special reasons in terms of, the D2 would be, you have to look at what problems would be involved, and could the site accommodate any problems? Well, the problems really relate not so much to any kind of development, because as we know, there's no physical change to the building, but it could be, a parking issue. Well, we've discussed how the site can be reworked to have a new layout for the parking. I discussed the RSIS standards. That does allow a board to consider the fact that we are within walking distance. We're probably the only neighborhood that close to the train station, because surrounding the train station in the other areas is a commercial area. So I think we're a perfect neighborhood for that consideration, the fact that we do have bus lines and train lines within easy walk. So in terms of the neighborhood, there's limited parking on the street anyway, so it's not like they can park, it's across the street, there's no parking on this side of 3rd Street. So we're not going to be impacting any of the other neighbors. We're talking about one more additional unit. And if the applicant had a family right now and had children, there'd probably be more cars associated with the 3rd floor anyway, because they're bedrooms. So I think that the increase of a 1-bedroom unit is not going to have any detriment to the public good or the surrounding neighborhood. As to the detriment to the master plan, again, we are a pre-existing non-conforming 4-family. I understand that. We're not consistent with the zone plan, but when you look at the goals of the master plan, they specifically talk about, preserving some of the architectural styles. I'll quote from the master plan. There's several specific statements that relate to our proposal. To protect the village's stable, diverse, and attractive residential neighborhoods. To protect and preserve the character, diversity, vitality, value, and existing density of the village neighborhood. To preserve the character and stability of the established residential neighborhoods. These are just more general goals. To maintain and improve the existing quality of housing. As I discussed before, and as the architect discussed, Mr. Betts has invested quite a bit of time and energy to keep this house consistent with the historical style in that neighborhood. It's one of the more beautiful homes over there. It's quite large because it does sit on a large lot, so as you drive up 3rd Street, you do notice it. It's set back, it has some lovely trees around it. So I think by preserving the character, of this house and not expanding it physically, I think we do meet some of the goals of the master plan.
So let me, if I get that argument straight. So by virtue of the fact that he keeps up his property, which I agree, it's been, at least on the outside, has been kept up nicely, and it's nice to see. So by virtue of the fact that he keeps up his property, therefore we should approve a 5th unit. That seems to be the logic.
No, what I'm saying is that there's no detriment to the master plan, because we're actually affirming some of the goals that talk about keeping the densities that exist. Well, if you look at my density analysis, you see that although we will be a 5-family, our density is only at 12.5 units to the acre. The zone already anticipates 14 units to the acre, and there's several surrounding 2-family homes that have densities much greater, that are in the 20s, 22, 25 units to the acre.
I want to take us back to this unit density calculation. The zone isn't built based on a units per acre density calculation. It's based on families per dwelling. And there's a reason for that, because there is a different character in a 2-family house than there is in a 10-family house. So even if the lot was big enough from a units per acre calculation, a 10-family house feels different, changes the character of the neighborhood versus 5 2-family houses. The zone is built around 1 and 2-family houses, and what we're here to do is to balance the question of the damage to the zone as a zone that is about 1 and 2-family dwellings of further density on this lot, right? That's our question. There's a mathematical rigor to your calculation, and I'll grant you that. And I think it's an interesting point to bring up in terms of a way to think about density. But our question here is about the character of the neighborhood, which is determined, I think, by the feeling of a single-family house or a two-family house packaged together on a street, which feels very different from when you go up to 3, 4, 5 family houses. That's our question here.
But at the same time, density is a nice way to look at it.
It's an interesting additional piece. My only point is that if someone had a 1 acre lot and was sitting here saying, because of the density of units per acre calculation, I want to put up a 15-family apartment building, I would say, boy, that's going to really change the character of that neighborhood. Even though the density of units per acre is consistent, it is going to significantly change a neighborhood that's about 1 and 2 family dwelling.
Yeah, but it doesn't drastically because, again, using the term density, it's about population, and there's going to be no harm by adding the other apartment because there's no overgrown population that could come out of it. So
Well,
I do like the density.
Well, what about following Mr. Parlapiano's argument that the fact that, and I'd like to hear from the planner on this, he correctly points out that the ordinance, in fact, does not say density units per acre for a reason. It's not because, oh, we really meant density units per acre. It's because it meant single and 2 families. And then along with that argument, the zone doesn't provide for multifamily, basically meaning 3 family and above. We do have a zone that does provide for essentially apartment buildings. So to me, that suggests that when the ordinances were created, they wanted to differentiate apartment buildings from single and 2 family along the lines that Mr. Parlapiano was saying. How would you address that?
What I would say is they also only require 6,000 square feet. And the fact that this site, you have to look at this site in its own context. As I discussed before, you're in a neighborhood, so you do impact people. But you also have to look at the specific site. So when you look at my land use analysis, if you get that map out, you can see how large this lot is compared to everyone else's lot. It's 3 times the size. So I think we're a very unique situation. I'm not saying this would work in every 2-family zone. I'm looking at this site, the particular suitability of this site, the fact that it exists now and has no violations, no neighbor complaints that I've heard of, as it exists at 4. So you have to look at those circumstances, that it's an excessively large lot, granted in a 2-family zone. But I think you have to look at the lot itself.
If I may ask a question.
Sure.
Obviously, there are other standards in single and 2-family zones, one of which is lot width. Could you please explain theoretically how many 2 families you could get on that lot?
I have to look at the lot width. I think it's 60 by 100 in that zone, I believe. Let me just double check. The RB.
The architect said 1,900 feet.
I have it right here.
So,
Just give me a second. Boy, when you print these off the internet, it's very
100
small
feet.
print. I'm sorry, it would be, an interior lot would be 40.
Okay.
40.
So we would only be, we would need a variance for a third, so we would definitely only be able to put 2.
2 families.
2 family on an interior lot would require 40.
Okay.
Yes.
So
We have an extensively large depth.
Well,
That's how you get to that.
And many residential neighborhoods in South Orange have very deep lots.
Mhm.
But in terms of lot width,
Mhm.
you could get
Two.
two families.
Yes.
Based upon the.
That's what the ordinance
The
states,
ordinance.
yes.
So using that logic, could lots 6 and 7 be modified to be 3 families, for example, each?
I didn't look at 6 and 7. I was just looking at this particular lot.
I'm not talking about frontage.
6 and 7 in
I'm
what
talking about
block?
5 here. They don't have enough
The
money
commercial
for farm.
properties?
Oh, I see, they're commercial.
They're on Valley, yeah.
Do you know the lots that are two-family here, how many of them are conforming?
I have that.
What was the magic number
I'm just-
for 6,000? What was the density? 6,002 units?
6,000 square feet. I have one that is 2,614 square feet. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a single family, never mind, sorry. I have one that's 4,356 square feet at 160 Valley. 176 Valley is only 3,920. 67 4th Street has 3,400 square feet. 79 4th Street has 3,700 square feet. 81 4th Street has 3,484.
Actually,
And I got this from the New Jersey tax records and the tax assessor of the
Right.
township of South Orange. I did an Oprah
So
request.
the magic
this is
number that I was looking for is 14, right? That's your ratio.
density.
Right, so lot 12 would be in conformity.
Lot 12 where?
On 2000, block 2003, lot 12.
That's 7, right, that has 7 units per acre.
Right, so that would be in
Yeah.
conformity according to that ratio.
Right.
And in 2009, lot 2 and 7 would be in conformity. All the others would be non-conforming.
By quite a bit.
Right.
Yes.
So the densities on those lots don't really help in that discussion, I don't think so much. Okay.
Can you go over again, what are the positive criteria? What municipal land use goal does moving from 4 to 5 units advance? And I understand, it's not by itself a major change, but, it should be some positive impact upon municipal land use law and its goals.
Well, it's providing housing that, there is a need for rental housing. I think that's obvious by the fact that you did a renewal or a redevelopment for the corner of 3rd and Valley, where you're putting in 80 units per acre with a 215-unit multifamily. I mean, the state of New Jersey's smart growth rules talks about, increasing the amount of rentals and things near mass transit. That's where you want to see some development. So I think that's, a planning principle is providing a variety of housing. This is a 900 square foot, 1-bedroom. It's a nice size unit, but it's not excessive in size. 900 square feet could actually be a 2-bedroom. But you're providing, maybe a middle range rent in this kind of a location that has access to mass transit.
Do we have other questions?
I do. You mentioned conserving architectural styles as one of the benefits of this application if it's granted. What's the difference as to the architectural style between granting it and not granting it?
No, my point was that it's a well-maintained home. We're not changing the architectural style in any way. We're keeping it the way it is.
I
Sometimes when you
understand,
have
but
an
it'll
expansion-
stay the way it is if the application is denied as well, right?
Possibly.
Okay. And also, you mentioned that you were there one day?
I was there 2 days. One day I was there for over a course of like an hour to 2 hours, driving around the neighborhood, driving back to the site at different times, yes.
And based on that, you say you were there on a typical day. How did you determine it was a typical day?
It was a weekday. It wasn't a weekend. I just meant a typical weekday. It wasn't a holiday. It was, I believe, a Tuesday. Just a standard weekday, non-holiday.
And you said there were no complaints that you heard of. Would you have expected
Well, I asked the
to hear-
lawyer specifically, were there violations? I always check on that. I'd like to know that for myself before I get up and testify and get blindsided that, there's been violations, which Susan can laugh because we've all been there. We've all stood there and had people say, well, did you know this? So I always check with the attorney ahead of time, find out, were there any building violations on this building? Were there neighbor complaints? Has there been any, issues with the property maintenance or anything like that? And I was told no. So I took that.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Gruhl?
How would you, Lisa, how would you characterize the neighborhood and how would you define the neighborhood?
I'd almost say it's transitional in the sense that from Valley and Third heading, is that west? Up the hill, that you're going, I'm sorry, east, that would be going east, that you're going back into, it's still two-family, and then I think the further back you go, it becomes like a one-family zone back there. It's transitional from the sense that from Valley Street into the property, it's some commercial mixed with residential, and then from Valley Street on the other side to the west would be commercial development. So I would say it's transitional.
Do you consider Valley Street, the frontage lots on Valley Street, to be part of the neighborhood?
I do, because it's within 200 feet, it's within the walking parameters of the neighborhood.
But essentially in terms of the character?
Well, there's some residential. It's not a pure commercial corridor there. You have some residences along there. So I would consider it part of the neighborhood. I mean, we're only about 200 and some feet back. Our direct neighbors are definitely the Third Street properties.
We have other questions?
Where's, I'm just trying to get a landmark. What is the use on lot 10 on block 2003?
That is a pet store or
That's
pet?
Pro Pets?
Pro Pets.
Or New Jersey Pets, or whatever it's called?
Yeah, this is this is the third property in from the back of that building. There's a single family, a two-family, and then this property.
What's the traffic like in this area?
I would say Third Street must be a cut-through to somewhere because it seems to have a lot of volume, that people go to that light to be able to access Valley to make the left. Maybe there's other streets in the neighborhood that don't have a signal, but I believe that it seems like a lot of the neighborhood comes down to that signal to be able to either go across Valley to the east or to make a left.
Right, this street is sloped down towards Valley.
Yes.
And the Pro Pets parking lot has all perpendicular parking that actually has to back out into the street in order to get out to go either way. I might even characterize it as somewhat treacherous.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I knew the right spot, that I wasn't making the wrong
No,
assumptions.
it's a busy area.
Okay.
Other questions?
I just want to follow up on your characterization of this as a transitional area, and I think that was a very good question to ask, and I think you're right, it is, right? You're moving between a more commercial, busy area on Valley, and obviously with the new development, but then a couple of blocks further up on as you move into the neighborhood, you're into larger single-family homes. Mm-hmm. And this block and this area is that buffer between the two where, the separation between those two areas. And, one of the concerns I always have, because South Orange has a lot of those transitions, because of the nature of the town, is the delicacy of transitional areas that we have to always be careful in considering that a change in the use of a single property there, when there's only really a pretty small number of properties here, might start to tip this where it changes the character of that. That transitional areas are delicate in that way. I'm going to get to a question at some point. My question is something like, is from a planning perspective, how do you think about kind of, defending and preserving what is really a buffer or a transitional block or two between two very different areas of the town and two very different zones? How do we preserve that if we grant this variance?
Well, as you know, there's no precedent set with this. Each one has to be viewed. There's no other property in the neighborhood that I could see accommodating more units in terms of the lot size and the ability to park. I mean, the one key thing with having the extra large lot is we do have the capacity, and we do right now have the parking on site. I think when you look at some of the other properties, I don't know how they would increase their density, not so much about the density, but about the parking. Some of them probably can't accommodate what they have now. I don't know if it's overnight parking allowed on the streets, but when I drove around the neighborhood, the day I was here a month or two ago, and then again this evening, it doesn't look like a lot of the two families would be able to accommodate 4 parking spaces. A lot of people, I don't know if they jockey the cars around, but I think in terms of this is a very unique property, and I don't think you can compare it, and I think anybody that would come, before this board, we're not setting a precedent here. We're saying that this property is so unique in this area, the size of it, that we can accommodate everything we currently do without any issues. So in terms of causing any impact to other properties coming in, I think your lawyer can advise you as that each one is taken on its own merits.
May I ask another question? And let me just throw this out as kind of a devil's advocate. Isn't the uniqueness already been addressed by having this house be used for 4 families?
Yeah.
Isn't that the uniqueness that has been created? I'm just throwing that out as a question.
Well, I think when you look at that, then the expansion, you have to look at the problems associated, and really it's all about the negative criteria with the expansion. And I think that we've talked about the problems associated with the parking, that can be accommodated on site. So I understand what you're saying, but it is still a unique situation, that we do have square footage within the building that's not being utilized to its full capacity, because you have one unit, these are large units, and the one unit itself has a 3rd floor that's associated with it that you have to actually go out into the main floor area to go to the 2nd floor. There's 900 square feet up there. So I think it's a very unique internal situation as well. It's unique to the structure.
Let me, this is repeating the question, but I think it's repeating it more pointedly. Your argument about density units per acre is an interesting argument. It'd be fine if that's what our ordinance specified. But does that not precisely mean what is a substantial impairment of the purpose of the ordinance by ignoring what the ordinance plainly says, which is families, and we move on to, well, no, let's look at density units per acre. It's just totally ignoring what the ordinance says, whether we like it or not, and moving on to other standards that we might like better. Is that not what you're asking us to do?
I thought I put forth special reasons for increasing it. I mean, I don't know what else to say in terms of, planners often use density. Years ago, it was FAR for commercial buildings. It's a way to show the intensification of the property. We understand that we're in a 2-family zone, but it presently doesn't exist as one. And what I'm trying to show is that there's really no substantial detriment to granting an increase of the 1 unit. So I know that we're contrary to the zoning. That's why we're here.
Other questions? None? Okay, thank you. One thing I neglected to do was to ask if the public had any questions for Mr. Dobson, the architect. I apologize for that. So I'm going to kind of step out of order here. Is there anybody in the audience, a member of the public, who wanted to ask questions of the testimony Mr. Dobson had? How about any questions for the planner from the public?
And for the applicant? To the applicant?
And it was, actually, Mr. Betts, I guess he gave some testimony, didn't he? Did anybody have any questions of Mr. Betts? None, okay. Right.
I understand, I think there's one neighbor who may want to say something who's...
Well, okay.
So before I speak, maybe you want to have him...
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to speak for or against this application? Now, don't we normally do the closing testimony before we have the... Yeah, let's take the closing testimony first and then have the neighbor speak, okay? That's usually the way we do it.
I just thought the man might want to go
Well, he may
home
want to hear what you
earlier.
have to say before he offers his comment. Excuse me? No, I want to do this in order, well, it'll be just a minute, sir, and we want to hear from you, but I want to do this in the order we normally do it. Okay, so Ms. Birkenwald, go ahead.
All right, I also, want to say that Mr. Betts is here, and we brought him up, but if the board had any questions. We have a unique property here. When Mr. Betts first came to me, knowing this board, I had some thoughts about this, but when I saw the property and saw this huge lot, this really unique lot, it's almost 18,000 square feet, and if you look at on the architectural plans and on the planner's summation, there's no lot anywhere near that size. I think his rear yard is over 85 feet. It's a very large lot. What we have now is 4 dwelling units. So we're not changing the nature of the building by going to 5. We're not increasing the building. We're not adding an inch of asphalt, although if the board thinks we should add a little driveway, we would certainly go along with it, but we don't think it's necessary. There seems to be no issue with parking right now, and we're not increasing the building, so we're not likely to have more residents or more cars. If anything, we'll have a kitchen instead of another bedroom. We now have a kind of awkward single unit on the 2nd and 3rd floor because you have to go into a common hallway. And we desperately need smaller rental units in South Orange. And here, without any dust, without any construction, without any negative impact, we have another rental dwelling unit. And this is a 100-year-old house, and I'm sure a lot of you know what it costs to keep up an old structure and to keep it in good condition and to keep it like Mr. Betts has kept with the gingerbread trim and not putting aluminum siding or vinyl siding on it. And if he gets another rental from this property without increasing the size, without changing this really beautiful historic structure, I think, although that's not a reason alone to grant it, and I won't bore you and repeat Lisa Phillips' testimony, but the proposed density of 5 units is still lower than what is allowed in the neighborhood. Any possible issues with parking is really addressed by RIS's standards for being so close to commuter transportation, especially the South Orange train station. There's no substantial detriment by allowing this to be a 5th unit instead of 4 units. It's particularly suited because of the 3rd floor and the existing rooms that exist there. We would preserve the architectural style, we'd preserve the attractive density that already exists, and we're still under the density that's permitted. I don't think there's, and the reason I think this is a D2 and not a D1, is I don't think there's really a a difference in use between a 4-family or a 5-family. Actually, under the law, when you go from 2 to 3, you have a lot of differences in building codes and building requirements. But between 4 and 5, there really isn't that difference in use. Instead of one large family, we might have 2 smaller families on the 3rd floor and in the 2nd floor. But that's really all. So I think South Orange, by zoning the 3rd Street redevelopment at that huge density, has acknowledged that near the train station, we really do need smaller units of rental housing. And I think that we've really shown that there are no detriments. Again, we need a substantial detriment for a reason to deny this. Under the D2 standards, we've clearly met that standard, and I think we've met the D1 standard too, although I don't believe it applies. I think we've really shown you that. I know this is not an easy thing for this board. I live here, I know this area, but we are asking to make a separate unit within an existing couple of rooms on the 3rd floor that exist there. And it would be better for the owner, and it would have no detriment, and it would add another rental unit to the town, which really needs it. So I would ask this board to approve this application.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll take comments from the members of the public. So if anybody wants to come up and say something, please do so. Sir, state your name and address, please.
Sure. Nicholas Beatty, 151 Academy Street. My wife wanted to be here, but she has to get up very, very early in the morning. So Nick and Margaret Beatty, 151 Academy Street.
Okay, where is Academy Street related to?
My apartment, or my property backs up to Mr. Betts's property. The side of it, along 3rd.
Okay.
Do you know what your lot number is, Mr. Beatty?
I'm on the corner of 3rd and Academy.
Okay. Lot 14. Lot 14.
14.
Okay, good. Go ahead.
When my wife and I were from Montclair, and we made a 10-year hiatus in Hoboken, when we looked at South Orange initially, we thought, what a great town. It's like Montclair, but it's not, it's new for us. And part of that was architecture. If you don't maintain architecture, people aren't going to stay. I own, or I'm trying to own, and Mr. Betts has done a great job of maintaining one of the properties in the neighborhood. So, in my opinion, my wife's opinion, you know, it's a very unique property. It's a 100-plus-year-old property with a unique story behind it in terms of what he's trying to do. There's no construction going on. There's no parking problem there at all. I've been there 8 years. I look out on his property every day. He's my neighbor. Whether he wants to be one or not, he's my neighbor. And there's never a parking issue. So, while the questions may be thoughtfully put together, they don't have any utility for the parking, for passing each other, coming in and out of the driveway. That doesn't exist. There's no issue. So then it comes down to, is there going to be construction there? Minimal, if any. Is there going to be an increase in footprint? Zip. What's the possibility set of somebody being able to afford the taxes if they had more income coming in? and maintaining architecture that costs a mint to maintain. I mean, at a certain point in time, there's a logic to it. Safety should be considered, you know, sprinklers or whatever needs to be done to make it safe. But if you were there for 8 years looking at his property, there are no complaints from any of the tenants that I hear about. He's a generous person. There are just no issues from me. So if you're looking at, can two cars pass each other? They could in 2005, and they could in 2006, and 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11, and 12, and 13. Makes sense.
Anything else?
No.
One of the things I'd just like to say, first of all, appreciate your comments, and it's always great to get a perspective of somebody who lives there. And
I'm sorry?
It's always great to have the perspective of someone who really lives there every day and can tell us what it's like. I think, you know, one of our concerns is always that a variance goes with the property, not with the owner of the property. And so we sometimes get into this question of, with a great owner, a lot of things can be made to work, but what we're being asked to do is to say, for all time forward, this can be a family house, right? And so we, you know, I don't think anyone's questioning that this owner, you know, seems to have done a great job and to make this work. I think some of the questions you're hearing from us is that what we're being asked to grant would live forever with this property.
And I appreciate that, but I would just respond to that this way. When we drove up Academy, we were looking for more land, but we came out of Hoboken after being in Montclair. By maintaining that footprint and not expanding it, and by utilizing the architecture that's there, if you could grandfather no more increase in utilization, you'd also be providing a revenue source to maintain what some people might say is a historical house. Just saying.
Yep.
Throwing it out there. That it's a Solomon-like decision, but...
I wouldn't go that far.
No, but I mean, if you're saying that increasing, you know, changing this forever in perpetuity, you know, you don't have to change it forever in perpetuity. You can just sit there and say, this is it, no more when it comes to this property. Anyway, that's my feeling.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, what I'd like to do here is get a sense of where the board is at. If the board is favorably disposed to this, or if it might be favorably disposed if certain conditions, you know, parking, if that's a big deal, or any of the other conditions that you might want to come up with would make a difference, and we could move on. But I'd like to get a sense of just principally on the, I guess, the planning aspects. I think that's where we need to make sure that we would move beyond that, because to my mind, that's the bigger issue, and at least from hearing y'all's questions, that was where the sticking points would be, not so much the parking issues. So, we have any thoughts, questions for each other, or comments?
I'd like to say on the, and I want to hear what we'll say. I appreciated Mr. Polipiano's reasoning on that it's not just density, and it's what the zone provides. There are houses in my neighborhood that could, if you're talking about density, and I live in a one-family zone, if you're talking about density, they could have probably a six-story apartment house. But that wouldn't be and shouldn't be permitted in the zone, and I'd scream and shout and make sure it wasn't in the zone. Also, just on the maintaining the property thing, again, there's no testimony as to how much income the property took in, and no testimony as to what the maintenance is. And yes, things cost money to maintain, but I discount entirely that line of thought. And again, there are houses in my neighborhood that are as old and as big, and they have no income, and they're maintained. So I discount that, and then I want to think about some other things.
Mr. Dodd?
Well, I look at it sort of, I try to look at it a little pragmatically. There's this existing upper floor that has a certain amount of space to it, which is, as it's described to us, it's very usable space. It's not a cramped attic space. There are some areas with significant height. And if it's not going to be used for this, realistically, if you sort of used your noodle, you could make a separate stair up from each of the units and expand the 2 units on the other floor. They'd be very big units. They'd be maybe 4-bedroom units. How rentable that is, I don't know. But if they were to be converted to that, would the intensity of the use be any less than if we granted another 1-bedroom unit up there? In reality, would the use of the building be any less? And I think, to me, the answer is it might even be more, because more bedrooms generate potentially more kids, more activity, more cars. If it were me, I would say that I would limit the parking to 10 cars. I don't see a reason to have 11 cars. That would limit 2 cars to the side of the building, and I think, realistically, I think that even though the driveway is a little narrow over there, I think it could work. Obviously, 2 cars can't pass simultaneously if there's a car parked there, but that would be something that we would have to say we would be willing to grant a waiver. I would like to see, for my own satisfaction, a drawing that accurately depicts what the line of the paving is on that side of the building. Is it going up to the wall? Is it remaining as it is now? Because as Mr. Renda said, if it's fine to pave more, but then we have a bigger variance for coverage, and then maybe we have to look into a different paver material. And the last thing that I would want to put in a resolution is that the area of the top floor with a ceiling height over 7 feet is limited to 1/3 of the area of the floor below. By my calculation, it works out to about 710 square feet, but that would be something that I'd also want on a final plan, because I think it's important that that doesn't become a 3rd story. I don't want to approve something that's, I know, is not allowed by law.
Well, if you have that as a condition, presumably that would be on an approval.
Right, so at least
Right.
it's something that we flagged that then goes to the building department, that it's something that we thought about, even though we really can't enforce it.
I think, Rusty, I think you asked about the positive, positive side of this equation, and we didn't hear a lot about it. I came sort of to your conclusion, Mr. Don, which is that the positive here is that you've got usable good space in a building that right now is not used, and the positive is to make the best possible use of it. I think your reasoning is very pragmatic. I'm not sure I like it, because that same line of pragmatic thinking could be applied in many, many cases.
All over town, sure.
And that's right, all over town.
Yeah.
But I think that's, when I look at this, I think they've done a very good job on the negative side. But I struggle on what the positive is, other than there's good usable space sitting there, and that this is the best use of that space.
Well, for the positive, I heard that, your town plan and vision studies suggest greater density in the CBD in close proximity to mass transit. And so they're arguing that they're
Yeah, but I don't
doing
think that
something
doesn't
towards
hold for
it.
me, because that plan does not overrule the zone. It says within those areas that are zoned for that greater. And so we had the case a couple months back on Church Street, right, where it was in fact zoned for a lot of density, and it was the right thing to do, right? In this case, this zone, and I think, the point about this being a transition zone is important, right? This is a very delicate area, and you could easily see a spillover from Valley in here, right? So I didn't buy that argument.
Is nobody concerned about the damage to the intent and purpose of the ordinance itself? It's one unit. I acknowledge that it's not going to kill the town one unit, but I've also said before, we can improve a town in 1,000 ways individually, or we can kill a town by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah. Well, that's
putting that aside, I mean, the intent of the zoning law, as I see it, is defined as families, whether we like it or not. It's not density units. That gets to what Mr. Adler was saying. It's almost sophistry to accept the argument of density units, because that's not what the ordinance says. And so to then base it upon density units is just to totally ignore what our ordinance says. Also, combined with that is that zone, as close as it is to places that our master plan wants to have multifamily, it doesn't allow multifamily. So in a way, it also acknowledges that.
And it's just as close to areas, to zones that are single family, and it's that, it sits between the two.
And then the other thing that came, there's actually a good question from Ms. Gruhl that I hadn't thought about, was interesting, is if it was divided in two, you could put two families there and you get 4 units. Well, that's what they've got, and that house kind of recognizes that the way it is now.
But the fact of the matter is, that does it make sense to have a building that has quality, probably the nicest space in the building, unused?
Well, there's tons of examples of that, including my own house.
Yeah, including my 3rd floor.
And
Well,
people
no
have,
one told you to live in a big house.
Well,
people have
but I don't
spaces
get
above
an
their
excuse
garages
for
that
it.
they don't yet have as a space that's a living unit.
I'm just saying that the alternative is that space could easily be put into the 2 units there, and you end up with 2 monster units on the 2nd floor, and you get rid of that whole issue of having to go out into the hallway by putting a second stair and reconfiguring the plan. I'm just saying that I don't know that that's a better solution for the town, for the intent of the density, than having another small unit. I think that all things considered, I originally didn't like this, and I think it's a workable solution. I think the property is big enough to handle it.
See, there's one of the positive thing here. Impact. There's no impact. No impact to the neighborhood.
That's not positive, though, Ed.
Yeah, well, that's a positive, because you will actually be putting another apartment there, and it doesn't change the physical appearance of the place.
I acknowledge that. Yeah, no matter where I'm at on this, I acknowledge it's not going to take the town under.
Well, it will add, regardless of whether they rented out the rooms or something, or had a big family of adults or whatever. I mean, it will add to the traffic issue that's on 3rd right now.
I'm concerned about the intent and purpose of the zoning plan. This is not Hoboken, and that's one of the reasons people move here. It's not Hoboken, and it's not Orange, in the Valley section of Orange, where you see sloppy zoning and the results of that. Hoboken is very crowded. You can't find a place to park, and little by little by little by little, if you're not careful, you lose the neighborhood feel.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Mr. Parlapiano was getting at. This, in a very small, tiny way, takes us down that road. It's in a small way. But that's our job, is to vote on these typically small cases. I think the principle here is more important than the pragmatics.
Well, what's interesting is that the problem as posed is that, you know, I only have a 4-unit building in a 2-family zone, and I'd like to have another one. And it's because my lot's too large. And I think that's a very interesting argument. I don't think I've ever heard that argument
It's not an
before.
argument. It's not an argument for a variance. And of course, like Mr. Adler said, well, if I have a 5th unit, I can keep up the property. That's nonsense. A lot of us have,
The
most of us are in
applicant
single-family homes.
the applicant did not make that argument.
And Mr. Betts didn't make it, to his credit. His representatives did.
Actually, I think it was a member of the public who made that argument. I don't think anybody else did. I don't want to discredit the applicant for something he didn't.
No, he didn't say it, so give him credit for that. Ms. Warren, did you have any?
Well, this is, for me, it's a tough one. When I look at it, I do think that adding the 5th unit would create less of an impact because there would be less overall bedrooms and maybe even less traffic as a result of what could be if this was used entirely as bedrooms, particularly if you threw a family in there with a bunch of teenagers. But at the same time, just because there's space, I don't know that that means that it's entitled to be living space. Like everybody points out, there's a lot of attics that aren't used as living space but more as storage. So I find it interesting that there's 4 units here and they're not looking for more storage. Perhaps they're using the garage as storage.
Oh, they have a basement.
Instead of for parking. I'm kind of on the fence with it. And I really appreciated Mr. Parlapiano's comments regarding the 1-family and 2-family zone and the tone that it sets. And the parking is not much of a concern to me overall, based on what we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, if I were for this, I could get past the parking.
Yeah.
That wouldn't stop me.
To Bill's point, though, the testimony was that the upstairs is being used. Not that I think that's a very important issue, because I do agree that with Paula's comments, that you don't have to have all of the living space or potential living space in a structure as living space. But the testimony was that the applicant uses those rooms. So they're not lying fallow. And then also, I don't think that highest and best use is a concept that should be applied to every part of a structure. I don't think that's the intent. And I do go back to what Rusty is saying, and that is it's zoned for 1- and 2-family houses. And what's the reason that we'd want to change that? So that's my feeling.
Okay, so they need 5 for this. Are we at a point where they would potentially have 5 votes?
It doesn't look that way.
It's not looking like it. Is anybody decided yet where you're at?
I agree this is a tough one, but I am leaning no more than yes.
Mr. Adler?
I'm leaning the same way.
As am I.
Mm-hmm. Ms. Warren?
Doesn't make a difference. It's one.
Well,
I'm a yes.
Okay, there's a yes. Mr. Semper's a yes, right? Okay. Well, you heard me. I can't approve this as much as I appreciate the work that Mr. Betts has put into the house. That's not a reason to approve it. So I would be voting no on this. So I'm a definite no, but all I've heard is 2 definite no's. There would need to be another definite no So there's 3 there. Okay, so there we have it. So then we need to just make a motion to not accept, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that.
Recommend we make a motion to approve.
That's right, because we messed that up before, haven't we?
Yes, we have.
So can somebody who wants to vote for this, make a motion to approve the application?
Actually, you can kick me to the side.
Well, this is important, because
Yes.
we've screwed this up where we've gotten wrong votes.
All right, I will make a motion that the application for the 5th dwelling unit is approved with, and these are my conditions, 10 parking spaces, only 10, not 11. A final site plan that's submitted to Mr. Renda just for confirmation that resolves this conflict between the line of the existing edge of parking and what is actually going to be proposed. And if that entails any additional paving, that's addressed with a pervious paver of some sort. And that the maximum floor area of the attic floor is limited to 1/3 of the area of the floor below.
Okay, can we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Semper is a second. Ms. Davis?
Okay, Mr. Don,
Yes.
Mr. DeScala,
No.
Mr. Parlapiano,
No.
Mr. Reeves,
No.
Mr. Semper,
Yes.
Mr. Aller,
No.
and Ms. Warren.
Yes.
Okay, so the application does not pass. I do want to, though, at least compliment Mr. Betts on his upkeep of the property, and I appreciate his doing that, and it's clear that the board members appreciate his work in that regard. Okay, so we have any other issues to discuss for this evening?
Where are we with our replacement for Mr. Groman?
For the members of the public who might be listening, Mr. Groman has resigned this week after over a decade of great work on this board. He was here kind of contemporaneous with my appointment. I watched him work. He's an attorney who had a good legal perspective, but he also added something to the board where he could kind of cut to the chase and help move matters along quickly. And I regret seeing him go, but it's a sign of the success of his work, I think, that he can't devote the time to the board anymore. So I wanted to thank him publicly, and I know you all have sent him emails too, and we do appreciate his work. But he has resigned, and so we're letting the Board of Trustees know that we need another member. And at this point, I assume it would be, it would be an alternate member. The first alternate would then move up to the regular membership, and then we would get somebody now as alternate number 2. Obviously, if y'all have, the public or anybody else has any ideas for members, please let me know, and I will let the Board of Trustees know. They're the ones that formally have the authority to nominate people to the Board of Trustees. But obviously, if we know somebody who has talent and skill, and even more so, willingness to show up and withstand this tedium, then we'd like them to volunteer for the board.
I have someone.
Okay.
May I ask a question? I saw an email come around recently that the Board of Trustees was going to be taking a different approach with managing board members and their renewals and doing interviews and all kinds of things. And I was tempted to comment on it because I'm concerned that if they start trying to flush out the board, then perhaps I think the years of experience that it takes to really get in the flow with what you're doing and be a well-contributing board member, I feel like we could lose some of that in the municipality as a whole. And I was wondering if there was any more information regarding that. Are there criteria that they're looking for? Is there something that
They're looking to micromanage the
If I
board.
could comment on that, I'm one of those affected, and I got the note that I had to go online and apply. I did do that, and let them know that I want to serve, Then I called the township, did you get my application? Because it was done online, and for a number of days, nobody could tell me whether they got it. In fact, still no one has told me whether they actually got my application. But I just want to say one thing. I think this is probably over 16 years being on the board. And Rusty and I may remember that at some point, the same thing wanted to be done. And Rusty, you may remember the lady was the controller.
Well, we don't need to identify her.
Yeah, well, not the name, but we had some issues very similar. And I just want to say, I trust your comment that, that we want to.
Yeah, I share, I agree with Ed. Ed and I have been on the board you were here before me.
Yeah,
and we've seen some members come and go, and it's not for everybody. I think we have a very talented board here. We have different views of opinions on things. I respect all of y'all's opinions, even when I disagree with them. Very thoughtful, well-educated, smart, and you show up and you're interested, and it's shown in your questions. It is not usual to have a board of this caliber that's volunteer like this, and I would be concerned also that it be whittled away. But now, on the other hand, I know no more than you do, and I have no inclination that they want to decimate this board. What I plan to do is let the Board of Trustees know that I have confidence in the board members who are up for reappointment. I'd like them to be reappointed, and that's Mr. Semper, Mr. Shapiro, and Mr. DeScala. So for what that's worth, I'm going to put in my 2 cents to the Board of Trustees. If you all have questions, by all means, ask the Board of Trustees what their intent is, and if you have concerns about them taking away qualified members, I think you should express that. That is one of my concerns also. This kind of board requires a certain willingness to tolerate tedium. It's not a board that is supposed to have an agenda, and that's kind of hard. Some people who want to change things, ours is it is kind of conservative in the sense of you're supposed to respect the ordinances, and that suits certain people better than others, and even more so to show up month after month after month and
So if this
do
is
the
my
work.
my last time.
You're not going anywhere, Ed.
16 years, I've never missed a meeting, so.
You're not going anywhere.
I mean, one of my concerns as well is not just that they're looking at the candidates for qualification, but that they're looking at the candidates to be a proper mix that represents the municipality. Because as you said, I think that the board has very thoughtful opinions, and they're of different variety. And I always appreciate that. As much as sometimes I may not agree with what's being said, I really appreciate that. I believe it reflects many members of the municipality, and I would really hate to see that go just because someone in the municipality that's not on a board was complaining about them having this great resume and not having a career opportunity or a standing opportunity to be on a board, and dilute our representation of the town as a whole. So, I mean, that's just my 2 cents for what it's worth, and before I put it anywhere in writing, I wanted to just bring it up at the meeting. And
Well, I think the good thing is that I don't think that people are beating down the doors to be on the Board of
Actually, I
Adjustment.
thought maybe there was. I mean,
That's what I
why
thought.
why
Well,
would
the fear
why would
I
they put
have-
forward a letter like that
the
if
fear I
they didn't
have
have a
is
list
that-
of people that were waiting to come in? you
That
know?
it's going to become a political thing.
Like appointed
You know,
type of thing.
that it becomes a lot like in a lot of towns, the planning board is very political because most of the people are appointed. The Board of Adjustment tends to be more independent. When I read it, I thought, oh boy, somebody wants to put people on the board because they want to get a certain agenda done.
And
I hope
what
that's
board
not the
does this
case.
impact? All of them?
I have no inclination that that's the case. It may be a certain ambition of the members of the Board of Trustees. I think the reality is it's hard to find good people. And I don't think we're stale. And if a board, if we were getting stale, then whoever is being stale should either preferably resign or, not be reappointed. I don't think this is a stale board. We have different, as I said before, different educations that combine to make it. We have a good board. We have attorneys. We have planner, architect, businessman. What are you now, Mike? I don't know what you are.
Unemployed.
He's a consultant.
I think the other thing.
Financial advisor, right?
So look, you just need to express your thoughts to the Board of Trustees. I'm going to be doing it formally to support the members that are up for reappointment.
Well, I think that the thing that's a little disconcerting is that we have no idea what the criteria are that they're going to use when they theoretically interview everybody.
Exactly.
Like, what are their qualifications to determine who's on the Board of Adjustment?
And whether they've taken the time to actually watch the videos, know the balance of the board, and know what seat they're filling.
It's arguably none of our business, but it's a business of the people of the town of
But there should be
South
some
Orange.
criteria that
Right.
people know.
Right. That's, I don't disagree. Just to answer a previous question, moving forward with all of our appointments, this is the letter from Mr. Torpy. Not just to our statutory boards, but professional services and other volunteers and committees. It is the intention of my administration and the trustees to conduct a comprehensive interview process. So that's every single volunteer in every single service profession. So it's not just this board.
No, it's yeah, right. That'll happen.
It's ambitious.
That's very ambitious, yeah.
I mean, I would just request they watch the meetings then.
And see how boring these really are.
Not even that, but, look at
Well,
the
if
mix.
you want to get to know what people are like, that's not a bad idea.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you again for a great year. Mr. Renda, Ms. Gruhl, Ms. Davis, thank you again for coming here every evening and helping make this thing run. And
Sorry.
Mr. Dwyer, too.
Sorry that we had to end it on a down note.
All right, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. We'll see you in January.
All right, great.
Happy holidays to everybody.